Recording in
Welcome, everyone.
progress.
Welcome. I now call this meeting of the Somerville City Council to order. In accordance with Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting of the City Council may be conducted via remote participation. Please note that video and audio of this meeting is being recorded and may be shown live on local access government channels in the City of Somerville website and will be available for future review. Will the clerk please call the roll?
This is roll call. Counselor Mba.
Present.
Counselor Wilson.
Present.
Counselor Ewing-Campen.
Here.
Counselor Scott.
Present.
Counselor McLaughlin.
Yeah.
Counselor Burnley.
Present.
Counselor Said.
Here.
Counselor Strezzo.
Here.
Counselor Klingon.
Present.
Counselor Davis. Counselor Pineda-Neufeld.
Here.
With 10 counselors present and 1 absent, we have a quorum.
And we wish Councilor Davis well. He is recovering from the flu. We'll begin this, thank you, Clerk. Pursuant to Rule 32, let it be known that this City Council salutes the flag of the United States of America, and let us recall our oath to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the Commonwealth to the best of our abilities and understanding. We'll begin this meeting with moments of silence, and I'll ask if any councilors wish to say a few words about members of our community that we have lost. Councilor Clayton.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you this evening, I ask that we remember Suzanne Hughes of Somerville. Her passing was back in January, but I would be remiss not to bring this forward for all of us to keep her family in their prayers. Not only is her family is so heavily entrenched in Ward 4, and her son Eric O'Brien, her grandson Eric O'Brien is a Somerville police officer, and her family has just given a lot to this community. So I just wanted to mention that she was born in Somerville. She was the daughter of the late Giuseppe and Angelina Bellino. She was 89 upon her passing. She was a loving Nana to Crystal Hughes, Ryan Hughes, Courtney Martinello, husband Ryan, Eric O'Brien and his wife Emily, Dallas O'Brien and his wife Jasmine, and Hallie Hughes. The greatest Nana to Shauna, Luca, Lena, Quinn, Emmerich, Roman, and Amelia, and many other family members who all grew up in Somerville and are we'll miss her dearly. I do just want to mention, sorry, I got my papers a little messed up here, but mainly that she was the she was the mother to Iona O'Brien, who is really somebody who is been a really strong member of this community, and the whole O'Brien family, as well the Hughes families, are in my prayers tonight. So if we could just keep them, sorry for the confusion here.
Thanks, Councilor.
Yeah.
Any others, moments of silence? Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Madam President. I've been, I think, remiss in not bringing this one to the council and to the city, but I did want to note the passing of what was known as the greatest neighbor on Beacon Street, Marty Tompkins. If you ever walk down Beacon Street, Marty probably shouted at you out the window and said hello to you. Bit of a legend there. Somebody whose political views were all over the map, but his sense of love and care for his neighbors was just no bounds. Truly an astonishing individual, and somebody that I was grateful to get the chance to know over my years. And I would say that in his honor, I'd put this in all caps, just like every text message the man ever sent me, and as far as I could tell anyone else. So Marty Tompkins, longtime resident of Somerville, formerly of Arlington, no longer with us, but his memory remains. Thank you.
Councilor Klingon.
Madam President, I just wanted to mention the most important part I was trying to get to is that Suzanne Hughes of Somerville passed away. She was the beloved wife of 69 years of the late George Hughes, devoted mother of the late George and Debbie Hughes, Iona O'Brien, and her late husband Jimmy, Joseph Hughes, the late Mark Hughes, and the twins Keith and Kenneth Hughes. Thank you.
Councilor. Any other moments of silence? Okay. Will everyone in the chamber who is able to please rise for the moment of silence? You may be seated. Thank you. Colleagues, this evening, we do have some items we are taking out of order tonight. We will, of course, start with our citations. Those will be a little out of order. We're going to do 2-2, then 10-1, then likely 10-2-1 after that. We will then have a presentation, which is item 412 on permanent supportive housing, and then take up Councilor Klingen's resolution, which is 4.11 after that. Then we'll take up 7.13, which is the municipal election calendar this evening, followed by a report of the parking study that we've been waiting for, which is 8.2. Excuse me, and then we'll get back to the regular order on the agenda. So with that, Madam Clerk, will you call the next item, please?
Item 1.3 is approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of January 23rd, 2025.
Any discussion? Seeing no opposition, the minutes are approved. Next item.
We still want to wait? Okay, cool. Item 2.2 is a citation by Councilor Pineda-Neufeld commending Fred Berman on the auspicious occasion of his retirement from the Office of Housing Stability.
We have Director Schachter here this evening, and Director, I am happy to read the citation, and I'll bring it over to you so you can give it to Fred. Citation: be it hereby known to all that the Somerville City Council and the Mayor offer their sincerest commendations to Fred Berman on this auspicious occasion of his retirement after more than 20 years of dedicated public service, including 6 working for the City of Somerville as Deputy Director of the Office of Housing Stability. Fred's advocacy has been instrumental in increasing affordable housing and preventing displacement all across Somerville. Offered on this 27th day of February 2025. Congratulations.
So good evening, Ellen Schachter, Director of the Office of Housing Stability, and thank you so much for giving this citation to Fred Berman. I know it means a lot to him. It means a lot to us at the Office of Housing Stability. Well, and thank you for giving me like 2 minutes, I hope, to say a few things about Fred. So the very, very first thing I wanted to say on the eve of Fred's retirement is that Fred is simply one of the kindest, smartest, hardest working, generous, and most principled people I have ever known. I got to know Fred well before he came to help me open the Office of Housing Stability in 2019. About a decade or so ago, Fred and I became almost constant collaborators in the Affordable Housing Organizing Committee that was founded in response to a housing summit organized by Danny LeBlanc and the Somerville Community Corporation more than a decade ago. At the time, I was a housing attorney at Legal Services. It was during the AHOC years that Fred became one of my most trusted collaborators on affordable housing and anti-displacement policy in Somerville. While AHOC worked on many important campaigns, of note was Fred's incredible work parsing provisions of the zoning code to advocate for changes that ultimately led to increases in inclusionary housing and linkage requirements. In addition to his work with AHOC and with OHS, Fred has just given so much to this community, and I know almost everybody here knows this, but I'm just going to mention a few. There is a long list. I'm not going to do all of them, but I did just quickly wanted to say he was a valued member of the Mystic Valley Task Force, a longtime member of the Ward 5 Committee, a member of the committee that helped launch the Community Land Trust, a member of the committee working for the initial passage of the Community Preservation Act and the 2024 campaign to increase the surcharge, a member of the Union Square Neighborhood Council Working Group designed to give residents a meaningful say in large-scale developments in Union Square, a drafter of the ordinance banning short-term rentals. The list goes on, and I want to say most of this was in his volunteer capacity and not his work time at OHS. And then just turning briefly to Fred's work at OHS, you know, since we have opened OHS, we've responded to almost 8,000 requests for assistance, most from housing unstable Somerville families, seniors, and persons with disabilities. and I mean this literally, OHS simply would not have been able to meet the overwhelming demand for services and be where we are today with a staff of 13 without Fred. Fred is the unique person that sees the larger vision, but is able to drill down to the most tiny of details, and that was an incredibly helpful skill in our office to help us get up and running. He's also one that never looks for glory for himself. He steps in where needed rather than seeking out individual recognition, and OHS simply would not have all the systems, funding, programs, and services that it currently has in place without Fred. On the policy level, the policy work Fred has done over the years has really helped to put Somerville on the map as a thought leader with all of you about affordable housing and anti-displacement policy around the state. Last, and I think most importantly in some ways, Fred has literally helped hundreds of Somerville families, seniors, people with disabilities to remain in the community and to be housing stable because he is a tenacious and never faltering advocate. And I want to say, you know, we have some very challenging clients and some very challenging cases, and Fred never will give up on anyone. So two quick examples I wanted to give before I close quickly of the work of Fred, who Fred is. First, a while back, Fred had done some amazing work to stabilize some seniors in the city of Somerville. And SCES, Somerville Cambridge Elder Services, called him and said, Fred, we're giving you this award. Thank you so much for your great work. And the first thing Fred said was, no, this work has to go to the entire OHS office and not just to me. The second example I wanted to give was that many Monday mornings or Tuesday mornings when Fred and I are in the office and I say, oh, we're just catching up. What did you do? How was your weekend? What did you do over the weekend? And no matter what I did to try to help him get a work-life balance, and his wife Lori's here, no matter what I did, I cannot tell you how many times he has said to me, oh, well, I helped this person pack. I helped this person move. I had to go to this person's house because they couldn't get into the office. So, you know, I just wanted to say this is the Fred that I know and love. He is irreplaceable. And I know that Fred will never leave the battle for housing as a right for all or for the fight for justice for marginalized communities. It is simply in his DNA. And while Fred is not leaving Somerville, he will be missed tremendously by the entire staff at OHS. And thank you.
So people who know me will not be surprised that I have a few remarks. So with your permission, so first of all, just thank you. This is a great honor and lovely words. It's been a privilege to be part of a community that more often than not welcomes advocacy for affordable housing, for responsible development, and for programs, policies, and resources that help neighbors in times of need. Such advocacy, for example, to increase linkage fees, the inclusionary requirement, or to create an affordable Office of Housing Stability wouldn't be worth celebrating, though, if that advocacy had fallen on the deaf ears of a mayor or city council. So thank you and your predecessors, thanks to former Mayor Curtatone and to current Mayor Ballantyne, for embracing these important initiatives. 6 years ago, I was fortunate to be invited by Ellen to join the staff of the city's new OHS. I was looking for one last career opportunity to be part of a mission-driven organization staffed by colleagues dedicated to that mission. I could not have found a more rewarding place to work. Again, our successes would have been much more limited without the strong support of former Mayor Curtatone, the even more generous support of Mayor Ballantyne, the consistently strong support of the City Council, and the advocacy support of former OSPCD Director George Proakis and current Director Tom Galligani, who all made sure we had the resources we needed. And of course, we wouldn't be where we are today without the visionary and powerful leadership of Ellen Schachter, with whom I had the privilege of partnering, as she mentioned, in advocacy as members of SCC's Affordable Housing Organizing Committee. Nor would we be here today if it were not for the wisdom, talent, energy, and unswerving dedication of my colleagues at OHS, who are scattered in the back there. Who, despite the sometimes burnout level of demand for assistance, have kept and continue to provide compassionate and effective services to our Somerville neighbors in need. Our remarkably low staff turnover rate is a tribute to their commitment. And I wouldn't be here without the patience, understanding, and support of my wife, Lori, who without much fanfare, demonstrates that same kind of commitment to others in her own work. Of course, that work isn't done. We and our surrounding communities need much more affordable housing, much more deeply affordable housing for households with working-class service industry or fixed incomes. We will continue to need resources for rental assistance and housing subsidies to pay for legal services, And we need the legislation that the City Council has endorsed and that Ellen and other advocates have been pushing at the State House for years, for a transfer fee, for rent stabilization, for right to purchase, for just cause eviction, for a statewide right to counsel, and more. Although I'm stepping away from my role at OHS, I look forward to supporting those campaigns as a Somerville resident. I also look forward to doing what I can to support the creation in Somerville of additional permanent supportive housing and other necessary resources for people experiencing homelessness. These are the kinds of invaluable programs I came to personally appreciate when I was active with the Cambridge Continuum of Care. Clearly, advocacy for funding to sustain the work we're doing and to create new programs and resources to address unmet need will face daunting challenges in the coming years given the devastating changes wrought by the Trump administration. I look forward to continuing in my new civilian role to work with all of you to protect our shared accomplishments and to counter the forces of cynicism, nativism, misanthropy, and xenophobia with the kind of Somerville energy that makes me proud to call this place home. So thank you for your ongoing support for this important work, and see you at City Hall, the State House, and wherever our efforts take us. Thank you all.
Fred, we're going to go around the horseshoe and all say lots of nice things. So you're welcome to stay there or come back up if you would like, whatever works for you. Before I get to my colleagues, I want to share my story, Fred. My favorite Fred Berman memory is sitting at your dining room table in 2007 when you decided to run for alderman at large. And I remember sitting with Lori and the rest of your campaign team and listening to you talk about the issues and talk about what Somerville was facing at that time, which was a different Somerville, and in some ways facing a lot of the same issues and challenges we're facing today, especially around housing. And I just thought to myself, this guy needs to be on the City Council, Board of Aldermen at the time. Such wisdom and such passion for the work and the issues, and we are so lucky that we've been able to harness that in the ways that we have through OHS and all of the community work that you do. But I want to say thank you, also for being a mentor of mine and allowing me to see myself here all those years ago. So thank you, Fred, and thank you for your leadership. We have Councilor Ewan Campen and then Councilor Mba.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, I just want to say to Fred that you are, and I know this is true of everyone here, you are a personal hero of mine. You are a North Star for myself, and I think for everyone in Somerville who cares about affordable housing, who cares about keeping people in their houses, and who wants to make a difference in Somerville. I first met Fred before I was in office, when at that point you were really working primarily with the Affordable Housing Organizing Committee, and I knew sort of that you had the reputation as the person who had really done a lot of the work to make 20% affordable pass, to make the linkage fees pass. And after I got elected, I have this memory. Similarly, I didn't realize I was going to be the second person to talk about your dining room table. We wanted to write a home rule petition to establish a tenant's right to purchase in Somerville so that if a building goes up for sale, the people who live there have an opportunity to buy it. And so me and our friend and collaborator David Tissell came over to Fred's house, and we just sat around the table, and I just sat back and watched this really complicated and long piece of legislation just pour out of your brain. And every little challenge that would come up, it would be like, I would think like, oh, we're gonna have to think about that and research that. And then I would just watch you like spin it around in your brain like a little diamond, and then you would come up with a solution and we would write it down. And it was banged out in 2 hours. And it was basically verbatim probably what we wound up passing. Ellen said it better than I possibly could, but I really, without exaggeration, think that you are one of the most impactful people in Somerville, whose work has helped the most people. What I really associate you with, Fred, is instead of being overwhelmed by all the things that we can't change, that we can't do, to always identify the specific things that we can change and then just work your butt off to actually get that done, just relentlessly, year after year after year. So thank you for all the work that you've done and to inspire God knows how many people in Somerville.
Councilor Mba and then Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you, Madam President. To Fred, I also, want to echo Ben's sentiment. You're a personal hero of mine as well. I think anybody that knows Fred knows that he's the only public servant I know that actually does municipal endorsements. So he's heavily involved in his community. Sometimes I've actually wondered if there's a conflict of interest in that process, because Fred doesn't, he's somebody who deeply cares and really committed. And if you've known him, even as a city employee, you will still see him participating, and he's really shaped our democratic process as a city. I remember every time he's always giving me his time, attention, and effort. When I met him once, and then discussed with Matt McLaughlin, I'm like, Matt, I've met Fred, one of the smartest person I know. Why is he not running for office? You remember those days? And Matt is like, well, he actually did run. And so, and then I said, okay, I'm not sure how this city works, because we should not be sitting in this horseshoe. For me, I feel like this is somebody like Fred that, should be sitting behind here. But anyway, so Fred, I just want to say, your dedication and contribution, have had a lasting impact on me and on this community, and I want to say thank you profoundly.
Councilor Strezzo, and then Councilor McLaughlin and Councilor Klingon.
Thank you. Madam President, through you to Fred, Mr. Berman. You are calm, you are gentle, you are steady, you are humble. I admire your stamina in a seemingly constantly impossible realm of work. Somerville is a better city, and the world is a better place because of you. That's indisputable. You've been, as Ellen said, instrumental in preventing displacement and have impacted so many lives. And the ripples of that resonating force it's an ocean, and it's incredible. And I am grateful to you beyond words. And the phrase, thank you, it doesn't seem like a strong enough set of words to really articulate how I feel, just how all you've done. I thank you. And I don't believe you're retiring. I can't. Let's be real. I don't think it's possible. It's in your blood. It's who you are. So we'll be talking policy and all the things soon enough. Just thank you.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Madam President. I think every elected official in the city would have something nice to say about Fred. But I know a different Fred. I know a Fred from long ago who elected officials would curse, and they'd run for the hills, scattering, saying, here comes this guy to push for more affordable housing in the community. Doesn't he know that people don't want this? I just call Fred and people like Ellen and other people in the room, the OPs, the original progressives in this city, the people who came before the city was a progressive city and made it into a progressive city. And I think that gets lost because everyone's like, oh, Somerville's so progressive. Not that long ago, that was not the case. And it was because of people like Fred who stepped up. He did run for office, yes, and it just wasn't the climate at the time for people to appreciate Fred. And now, years later, he's basically telling us what to do and doing our work for us, and we get to take credit for the things that he's done. I have one story about Fred that I just wanted to share because it had very impactful of mine. I know many people here, I've told this story several times about an affordable housing project on Highland Ave that was rejected by the zoning board because it lacked parking. This was not that long ago, 2010 or beyond, so not that long ago. Several elected officials showed up and testified against this project because they wanted to add 2 new units for formerly homeless families. I was on the board of the Somerville Community Corporation with Fred at that time, and I remember feeling outraged about it and not knowing what to do and wanted to push back as SEC went and pushed for it, but they didn't win. Should we just leave this alone and move on? And I didn't feel comfortable leaving that alone, and Fred didn't. And I remember being in that boardroom with you, and you really pushing me to step up and say something, which I didn't feel comfortable at the time. And we lost that fight, but we won the war in the end. And I might exaggerate by saying that was a turning point in the city, but it was definitely a turning point in my life. And because of that, and because of the many fights that you fought, Fred, we're at where we are now. So I think, your greatest legacy is going to be the people who are still in the city, living here, who have roofs over their head. I think that's the greatest accomplishment anyone can ask for in this city. But everyone around this horseshoe owes you a debt of gratitude because you changed, and other people like you changed the dynamic of the city and made it a place where fighting against affordable housing is unthinkable now. So thank you, and we're also changing the state in the process too, and hopefully this entire nation. I can't thank you enough, and like Councilor Strezzo said, you're not retiring. We're gonna see you up here some more. Thank you, though.
Councilor Klingon.
Oh, thank you, Madam President. My Fred story is way cooler than all of these Fred stories. It involves Fred, a baby, a mugger. No, I'm kidding. I don't have any cool Fred stories, other than the fact that I think Fred is super cool, and I'm just really grateful. Obviously one of the things that we did right, or the city did right rather, was bring Ellen Schachter on board, who was, in her wisdom, immediately reached out to Fred because she knew. She knew the value that Fred brought and from his work in the community, and so I've dealt with Fred a few times on a few tenant issues. He's been awesome, and it's hard to see him go, but everybody deserves rest, and like he said, we'll probably see him at the State House and and City Hall and everywhere. Regardless, but Fred, thank you for your service, and I really appreciate it, and just enjoy your free time. Thank you.
Councilor Wilson.
Thanks, Madam President. My first encounter with Fred was running for office in 2021, and I will say we get asked a lot of questions on the campaign trail. I want to say the questions I was asked by Fred were just off the charts in terms of their insightfulness. Calling them questions actually sells them short. There were, explanation. I remember going into the subsidization of units, just the most thoughtful questioning that I'll say that I went through in that cycle by anyone, and I really appreciated that. And it's always going to stick with me. And I'm just, debt that we owe you of gratitude, Fred, for all the work you've done, both in an official capacity for the city and as an advocate, is just, it's just off the charts. So thank you so much.
Councilor Burnley.
Thank you. Just as an effort to keep Fred from retiring and keep him in this building, I'll talk for a brief moment. Having not known Fred as much as long as some of the folks around this horseshoe, I'll say that my main experience working with him has not been through the Office of Housing Stability, which is fantastic, and we love all the folks who work there and do the great jobs that they do. But I've mainly seen Fred in community. I've seen him at protests organized by CAS. I've seen him at the State House. I've seen him outside of buildings where landlords are threatening to displace families and children. This is someone who really defines what a public servant is. Not just someone who, as has been mentioned, goes for the glory or, clocks in, clocks out, but someone who takes the time to really care about the folks of this community, to stand up for them on a Monday through Monday. And it's just been incredible to have conversations with him and to feel that you can be an expert and you can still have passion about these issues, and you can still push for more and not settle for what is being offered, but instead shoot for the sky with a plan to actually get there. And that's the person I've known through, again, mainly not my capacity as a counselor, but as a member of this community. And I know so many people who have contributed to the city in so many ways who have been bolstered by Fred Berman, and I'm incredibly grateful to say I've one of those people. Thank you.
Councilor Said.
Thank you, Madam President. So I met Fred 2 years ago when I ran for office, so we had similar experience to my colleagues, sitting around his kitchen table and having very insightful, thoughtful conversations and learning so much from him about affordable housing and the work we need to be prioritizing as a city, but also I had this really nice experience when Fred gathered community members, and we sat in a circle, and we had a really important, deep conversation as a community, and that's something I will never forget as I'm doing the work on council. So for all of that, I want to take a moment and say thank you and much gratitude for all the work you've done and that you will, I'm sure, continue to do. But I also hope you will find time to enjoy your retirement. So thank you, and I look forward as your ward councillor to continuing the work with you and learn from you.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm not going to tell what I consider to be the best Fred Berman stories because I'm not a narc. No, I just, Fred, I can't say enough about you. And you've heard it all here. In addition to all the people you've helped to stay here in this community, in addition to the ways you've helped materially shape the conditions of folks here, I think what you hear tonight and what might be even more enduring is the ways that you've inspired the people here to step up to that work, to do that work, to continue that work. All right, it's not ours, it's never ours to finish the work. And you know as well as everybody or anybody that the work isn't done. And as much as I know you will continue to do it until there is absolutely no way you can do it anymore. I think you've inspired all of us and many more around the city and around the state to continue that work. we're not at liberty to set it down in many ways because of the example you've set. So thank you, and I think you have the gratitude of this entire council now officially, and of course, all of your neighbors.
This item's approved. Congratulations, Fred. Should we take a roll call? You nervous about that? Next item, Madam Clerk.
The next item is item 2.1, a citation by Councilors Wilson and McLaughlin, commending Cristiano Oliveira for his youth national team success and continued soccer legacy.
Councilor Wilson.
Madam President, I'll just read this here. It's a citation here from the Mayor and City Council. Be it hereby known to all that the Somerville City Council and the Mayor offer their sincerest commendations to Cristiano Oliveira for the honor of being selected to represent the United States on the U17 men's youth national team in qualification for the 19th FIFA U17 World Cup. The City Council and Mayor extend their best wishes for continued success on the soccer pitch. I just want to say a few things here. Cristiano Oliveira is an incredibly talented young footballer. Yes, he's naturally skilled, but what has always impressed me the most about him is the work he puts in on his game to get to this level. Anyone who has coached or played at Capuano Field in East Somerville is accustomed to seeing Cristiano there at the field, working on his game by himself, often for hours. So it's really a testament to all that hard work that Cristiano was called up to the U.S. men's youth U17 national team for those qualifiers earlier this month in Costa Rica. Happy to report it is, in fact, indescribably cool to watch someone you know from Somerville playing for a national team on TV. And those who watched those qualifiers got to see Cristiano make his debut off the bench in that first game in a headline-making 22-0 mauling of the U.S. Virgin Islands. Cristiano started the next game and scored the second goal of the game in an emphatic 7-0 win over St. Kitts and Nevis, and he came off the bench in that final game, a 2-0 win over Cuba that saw the U.S. qualify for the U17 World Cup in Qatar later this year. So it's great for us to recognize Cristiano's achievement like this and to feel pride as a city for one of our own doing this. It's also important for us to hold him up as an example to the younger generation of what is possible with hard work and dedication. So congrats, Cristiano. I have a strong feeling this will not be your final citation that you get from the City Council over the years.
Thank you, Jake. I actually just wrote this, so I just wanted to say it's truly an honor to receive this award tonight. The city has given me everything from the field to the schools that I went to, so I'm super grateful. And it's truly an honor to represent Somerville wherever I go, and I'm always going to carry that with pride and honor. So I just wanted to thank you guys, and thank you guys for all being here tonight. Thank you.
All right, that item's approved. We have one more citation, and which we'll speak to, and then we'll take a quick break for those who want to take pictures with those getting citations this evening. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Item 10.1 is a citation by Councilor Pineda-Neufeld, commending Michael Filoni for 10 years of dedicated service in the Housing Division.
Okay, so do we have Mike here? No, he just left. Is he coming back? No, he's gone. Well, I'll read it anyway. Yes? Okay. So, citation. Be it hereby known to all that the Somerville City Council and the mayor offer their sincerest commendations to Michael Filoni for his 10 years of dedicated service in the housing division. He was instrumental in adding affordable housing, making Somerville a more equitable and accessible place to live. The City Council and the mayor extend their best wishes as he moves to the state level to advance the Affordable Housing Act. Congratulations. Director Galagani.
Thank you, Councilor. Madam President, Mike Filoni, the king of the Irish goodbye. If you spend any time working alongside Mike Filoni, you will come to appreciate his attention to detail, his sense of humor, and his indispensable knowledge of Boston sports history. He reaches back into the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and I can totally appreciate that. But what we'll really remember about Mike is his dedication to the work. He's a man driven by the mission. He's driven to make the world better every day. His entire career has been singularly focused on creating more affordable housing in the Boston area. We have been fortunate to have Mike manning the housing division during the most transformational period for housing in the city's history over the past 10 years. We've been a community with an insatiable desire to increase affordable housing. During the past 10 years, we've actually been in a position to fund those desires and make it happen. We've seen a dramatic jump in affordable housing production under his watch. Production has quadrupled over the past 5 years. Mike has built up a staff in the housing division to meet the moment by expanding staff capabilities, expanding the scope of what the housing division is able to do and who it's able to reach, leading all of our major affordable housing initiatives during this period, talking 100 homes, Clarendon Hill, increase in our inclusionary housing ordinance to where Somerville is a leader across the Commonwealth. And coming soon, the universal wait list. He's done all this behind the scenes, without fanfare, without needing attention, and also making sure that the systems function right on the back end so that every penny of affordable housing subsidy truly makes a difference. He's left the housing division in a much better place than when he found it. And he's done all this with his attention to detail, his sense of humor, his knowledge of Boston sports history, but most importantly, he's done it all with his heart and singular dedication to the mission. So I'm so pleased to wish him well. It's, Fred is leaving, but he's not really leaving. We know he's going to be around. Mike is leaving. He's still going to be fighting the good fight on behalf of all of us, just at a different position at the state. So I'm proud of him, and I'm happy to see him go on to greener pastures. Thank you so much.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to say a brief word. I think all of us, I very much include myself, love to talk about affordable housing. It is a different type of person who actually does the work of administering that and getting through the just incredibly difficult, time-consuming, complex documentation and negotiations and legal work. And that is, from the day I met Mike, I remember every time you see him, he has like 15 things written on the palm of his hand. He's so in the details of the work. He is not grandstanding, he is not giving speeches, he is getting it done in a way that I think very few people appreciate how much work that takes. And just one story, I remember when I first joined the council, I put in some order, I was very proud of myself, I want a monthly update from the housing division on all of our efforts, yada, yada, yada. And we got our first update, and it was really long. I mean, it was like a 6-page memo with a lot of detail. And then I remember talking to Mike about it afterwards, and he was happy to provide it, happy to present it in committee. And then he just said in an incredibly respectful way, these are a lot of work to report to you every month. We have a lot of stuff that we're actually doing. So maybe you could not ask us to do so many reports to you. And that, it got through to me, I will say, just when I saw just how much work went in to how seriously he took the request and how much work it represented behind the scenes, just not for them to do the report, but how much work was going on. And it helped me understand, maybe I don't need to get an update every month or every quarter from what they're doing. They kind of seem to know what they're doing, and I'm happy to let them let it rip. Congratulations, Director. We're going to miss you around Somerville.
Councilor Baum.
Thank you, Madam President. I couldn't agree with the good councilor from Ward 3. I sit on the Affordable Housing Trust, and I have seen the level of details and dedication that, Mike, brings each time we have our meeting. And I just want to thank him, that his dedication in strengthening, and expanding, affordable housing will also have a lasting, impact in our community. I also want to take this moment to also thank Paul Goldstein, who also works with Mike. I don't know if he's here. Paul, thank you, thank you. Paul is also another fierce housing, advocate, and I want to thank you immensely for all your work and dedication for the city. Thank you.
Councilor Clean.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to say a little something about Mike as well, even in his absence. I like to, we all talk about sort of bringing, our own sort of life experience to the council, and so when it comes, what I want to say about Mike Filoni is that, it's kind of been alluded to, he's a director, but he's a down in the trenches director. And why that's important to a city councilor is because, knowing, from my own housing and security and just the community I grew up in, with people I grew up in, like some of these lotteries are like life-changing, dream come true lotteries for people when they get into housing. And if any of you have had any instances where maybe something got messed up with the paperwork, or somebody had to be told, oh, you drove for Uber for 2 days and now you've gone over the limit by, $50 and, these things. Well, Mike would chase down every detail, because I needed to know that our city office was doing their very, very best to make sure that nothing was overlooked and that somebody wasn't being cheated out of an opportunity that they, rightfully won in the lottery or whatnot. And Mike, every time he didn't, nothing was too, he took the time to go through every detail and to look through everything and to make sure that everybody understood exactly what was going on with the situation, so that, we knew that we had somebody running this program with the utmost integrity, and that, I could feel confident when I said to people that, no, we're doing everything within the city's limits in this situation for their portion of it, to make sure this is fair, and we'll continue to do that. And that was because Mike was in that seat, and I hope that his replacement takes just as much time like that, and is just as, doesn't big time us or anything like that, is definitely all about making sure that we're, doing right by our constituents. So I just want to thank him for that, and I'm sure there's plenty of other great things that the people in his office must know about him that I don't, but this is my experience dealing with Mike Filoni, so I wish him well.
Okay, that item is approved, and we'll take a 5-minute recess. To call this meeting back to order. Welcome back. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
The next item that will be taken out of order is item 4.12, an order by Councilor Pineda Newfeld that the Executive Director of the Office of Strategic Planning and Community Development consider increasing permanent supportive housing across the city.
Thank you. So I'm excited to sponsor a speaker tonight on this. Just a little background. There was a great event organized by the Somerville Nonprofit Collaborative Group in December that I wasn't able to go to. I don't know how many of my colleagues were able to be there. But this is such an important issue in our city. And as we think about our next budget season, our budget priorities, I wanted to be able to provide this information to all of you. My hope is we get to have a conversation with our guest speaker tonight, which I'll introduce in a moment, and then send follow-up questions and conversations to committee, which will be meeting next week. So with that, I want to introduce and sponsor Joyce Tavon, who's the CEO and a Somerville resident of the Massachusetts Housing and Shelter Alliance. Welcome, Joyce. Come on up. And we'll pull up the slides as well for you, which are attached to the item.
Well,
Joyce,
thank you,
welcome.
Madam President and City Council, for having me. I'm just going to go ahead and date myself. So, 1985, I was fresh out of college, and my first real job was here, Somerville City Hall. Back then, I got hired to work in what was then known as the Mayor's Office of Human Services. We were in the basement. I think it was a lot rattier back then. And really, homelessness was just emerging as a social issue. I have to say, I'm conflicted. While I find a lot of deep meaning in the work that I've done in this field over the decades, I have to say, 40 years ago, we never thought that this would become such a normalized part of our landscape. But yeah, I came here fresh out of college and have basically spent my whole adult life in Somerville, put down roots here. So really happy to be here with all of you tonight, so thank you. What I'm gonna do is just talk a little about, real quickly, like who we are, the organization that I lead, what is supportive housing, and what we might do in Somerville to create more of it. So I am not, who's controlling the slides? I guess I am not.
Clerk is controlling the slides.
Thank you. Well, we can go to the next slide. Okay. There we go. Yeah. So real quickly, who we are. Massachusetts Housing and Shelter Alliance, fondly known as MAHASA in our field. We've been nationally recognized. We're a statewide alliance. We bring together about 100 organizations really focused around the ending of homelessness for adult individuals. So a lot of our work has been around advancing supportive housing. And our very own Somerville Homeless Coalition here in Somerville is a member, as our, as I said, organizations all across the state. Next slide. So among the things we do, these are kind of the buckets, kind of the traditional advocacy and policy work. We also are an intermediary for funding, and we also do technical assistance with projects and with cities and communities. Been doing a whole bunch of work in Pittsfield, Lowell, Worcester, just to name a few. Big focus for us is innovation, and we often get involved in how we launch, test, and manage models of supportive housing, always in partnership with our members. And we're a convener. We pull together our members for strategizing, for training, and all the rest. Next slide. So what is supportive housing? Few key things. What we're talking about here is permanent housing. Right, not a program, but people are tenants. We're talking about housing that is deeply affordable and where services are wrapped around, but not imposed on people. So you may have heard of the lingo housing first, And that is that kind of model that is focused on people are kind of the drivers of their experience. And what we have learned, while sadly homelessness has now been around for decades, the good news, we have learned from experience that when you move to housing first and get people first into housing and get them the stability of a roof over their heads, they can start to work on these other issues in their lives. Because it is really hard to expect people to address their addictions, their mental illness, and all the rest if they're in a crowded shelter or living out on the streets. So you can see from the example, wrapping services. So yes, next slide. So who needs it? Real quickly on the data, and one of the things my organization does is kind of looks at the data for the state. It's taken years to be able to get access to data and actually start to use it. But you can see you got roughly 13,000, just shy of 14,000 households. This was a snapshot from back in November, who are experiencing homelessness of any kind. Most of those households, to end their homelessness, they need a home. They don't necessarily need supportive housing. When we talk supportive housing, we're talking a subset of folks. And in our world, on the right-hand side, you can see the lingo, we talk chronic. That means people who've been homeless long-term and have disabling conditions. We're also trying to think about those kind of high acuity. They may not have been homeless long-term, but they may be in and out of it. And also, because of their disabilities, they need those services. The data shows typically 90% of the folks in this situation are individuals, and about 10% are households that are families. In total, we're talking about 30% of all of the households that experience homelessness. So next slide. So quickly, when we say supportive housing and how is it funded, we think about it as the three legs of the stool, or the three pillars, you could say, of the house. So you have to have the resources for capital, for operating and services, and they can come from a host of places: federal, state, local, public, and private. Also, keep in mind that when we talk about supportive housing, it doesn't have to mean that all of it is bricks and mortar that is publicly financed. I will touch on examples where the capital side, in a sense, was the result of private financing. So next slide. And the impact of supportive housing. I touched on housing first. It's now been really a proven model. All the way on the right, you can see the number 5,267. So kind of a multi-year analysis that was done by third parties that looked at Medicaid usage, mass health usage by folks who had moved into supportive housing, having been chronically homeless, compared against a cohort that was chronically homeless, and per year, that's the savings per person in healthcare costs. And the other good news is people started to use healthcare more appropriately. Instead of being in and out of emergency rooms and acute care hospitalizations, they're getting outpatient mental health care and substance use treatment and things like that. And there's a little link to the study around that, and data on the pool of folks. And you also can see the 85% remaining housed. This is now like standard in the field, that a year to 2 years out, that's the housing retention that is very typical in supportive housing. So next slide. And just, a reminder, as a community, supportive housing benefits all of us. It benefits everyone. Homeless shelter numbers drop. You have fewer people living on the streets. Hospitals can devote more time to emergency care. And rather than having people in and out of their emergency rooms who really shouldn't be there. And police can devote time to public safety and community safety. As I've heard others in the field say, housing first is just good economic development policy. So next slide, just to give you a snapshot of the supportive housing we have at the moment in this state. And this is all the housing that is targeted specifically to folks who've come out of chronic homelessness. So, and by the way, you can use the term supportive housing more broadly, right? You might have people who are elderly who need deeply affordable housing and services, or folks with mental illness who similarly need that, and maybe in group homes, who didn't necessarily come out of homelessness. So these numbers are the 9,500 units in this state that were created to address and end chronic homelessness. And they run the gamut of all kinds of models. So some of it is housing that is a building somewhere, and some of it is apartments just scattered in the community. And some of it was built for this purpose. Some of it is folks going out and providers helping people rent housing and then wrapping services around them. Quickly, you can see bottom right, some of the regions. Boston and Cambridge have 3,800 units. I know from my days of working in Somerville, we don't always like to be compared with Cambridge, but I just thought I'd flag. Cambridge has 600 units of supportive housing. And while our great city is doing a lot of really, really good stuff to advance affordable housing, we are way behind on supportive housing. And I know we have folks in the room who can speak to that. So continuing on, I thought I'd just touch on, I don't want to take you deep into the policy wonk world, but some of the strategies that my organization's been advancing. So over on the left, tenancy support services using Medicaid. I know we're concerned this is going to be under threat, but we were actually the first organization in the country and made our state the first in the nation to develop the use of Medicaid funding to help fund services for people in housing, because it was a whole lot cheaper when Medicaid helps do that rather than paying for people's health care costs in emergency rooms and all the rest. And if you want to flip to the next slide, I'll just skip through. And this is a little about that model. And that is now a fully covered service in this state. And it's really the critical service resource right now that gets combined with capital and operating to create supportive housing. It's not the only, but it is the kind of foundational service resource that any project doing supportive housing will tap. Next slide. And essentially, there's always fine print, but basically covers any eligible person moving into supportive housing. As I said, it's core funding. And the next, just mention, people know about the Affordable Homes Act, our historic housing bond bill. In it was language to create a supportive housing pool fund. So this is at the state level. My organization is part of the coalition that is now working to get what will be kind of the language, the implementation plan for that. There isn't money yet in the fund, but ideally the point of this is you're pooling resources in one place and not creating a situation where developers have to go here and then there and then there and then there to get the funds together for a project. So more to come on that. Next up on master leasing, want to flag this as an example of one of the ways communities can more easily add supportive housing that doesn't necessarily take public financing on the development side. So basically, a nonprofit goes and leases an entire property or apartment. Somerville Homeless Coalition does that now. It does it here in Somerville and in Arlington. The innovation that we're really pushing now is how to use this model not simply to go into the existing rental market and rent housing, because probably that housing might have helped a different poor household, but rather when you go to a landlord and say, and I can show you on the next slide if you don't mind, a provider, like, we will give you a multi-year lease, guaranteed one lease for your entire property, handle all of the screening of tenants, the evictions, day-to-day management, and provide support services like through a partner. We now have developers, we've had a few so far, who've stepped up and said, oh, okay. So I'll give you an example in Lynn. Developer said, all right, I'm buying these 2 parcels. I'm developing them into a blend of single-room occupancy and studio housing, and 44 people were moved out of tent encampments in Lynn into those properties. 0 capital cost on the public side. And basically, because the developer was able to do it privately, he was able to get those built in 18 months or less. And my organization is now working with another developer who actually does have a social conscience and wants to be doing this, who's got a property lined up in Haverhill that we were looking to do a kind of intensive model, also partnering with some of the healthcare insurance agencies. So just wanted to throw that out as an example. And then the final kind of other example, modular construction. So we all know we have a big project happening in Clarendon Hill involving modular. This is a use of modular at a much smaller level. So I was just out seeing the laying of the project there in the bottom right in Worcester recently, where basically you take the footprint that a typical triple-decker would be on, and you combine modular, off-site manufactured housing, micro-efficiency studio units on like an infill property, and they're doing 16 units on that property. And this particular organization did a similar project in Worcester, so this is now their second one. And the goal would be to do these, like have a template of them so that we can do them more quickly and efficiently, because it dramatically cuts down on construction time and costs. So next up, so what can municipalities do to add supportive housing? Planning, I would say, start now so you're ready when the money comes. And I am aware this feels like, you know, the absolutely worst time. I mean, who knows what's going to happen at the federal level. But I can't stress enough that, you know, those moments come when the opportunity and money is there, and the communities that were lined up and ready were able to move. So quick example, height of the pandemic, my organization was the intermediary for $15 million supportive housing. I would have loved to have seen some of that money go into projects in Somerville, but nothing was happening here on that to pull together the providers, the developers, so there wasn't the opportunity. So critical, and the communities that had I mentioned like Pittsfield, Lowell, Worcester, the places that we've been working on where they put together kind of, you know, a task force around Housing First, they were ready, lined up, able to get some of those resources. Just as an example, you know, a place like Pittsfield, they've got 3 projects that are now close to being done. We'll add about 60 units of supportive housing. So siting and zoning, won't get deep into the weeds on that, but just there are communities that are friendlier in how they support supportive housing, and that makes the process move faster. Happy to, you know, talk to you further at any point if you want to learn more about that. We're involved in doing, going to be rolling out some training for municipalities around that. And funding, you know, certainly any ways that communities can add direct funding. Again, realize who knows what's going to happen on the federal side. I know an example that was shared with me would be kind of indirect, like looking at the support of the Somerville Affordable Housing Trust. And if it could have both a requirement incentive for some supportive housing set-aside units, then the providers in the community that do have some subsidies know where they could turn to create some partnerships. And then, yeah, finally, partnerships, any opportunities to build those with our developers and service providers to create housing. And then the final slides I'll just whip through just to show you some pictures and examples. Here in Worcester, you can see a picture of, this is a motel that's in the process of getting converted to 90 units of supportive housing. Got some of that money I mentioned to you. Next up, I thought an example that might be quite relevant, what's called Chelsea Commons. So this is the former Chelsea YMCA, kind of like our own Somerville YMCA, very old building. Chelsea Y sold it several years ago to a local realtor and developer who, born and raised in Chelsea, worked on renovating it. And again, when we had money and opportunity, we then partnered with him. And my organization actually holds the master lease. We've got 58 single-room occupancy and studio units, all there working with Bay Cove Human Services. Some of you may have heard of them. They're on site there. So really significant transformation. And these are the women's houses, also in Chelsea, 2 projects, basically kind of triple-decker style, places that were fully renovated, master leased, providing supportive housing for women. And then just finally, you know, just let us remember the human impact and the human stories. And this is a gentleman who lives in supportive housing, and we see it over and over. It is absolutely life-changing for people to have this stability and to get out of this tragedy and indignity of homelessness. So thank you very much, and happy to answer any questions if you have any for me.
Colleagues, any questions? Councilor Bruntley.
Through the chair, thank you very much for being here. This is an incredibly important topic that you're bringing to our attention, so thank you for that. There's many aspects of this I'm very curious about. I look forward to just like poring over these slides in detail and just staring at them until they bore their way into my head. I am curious about the management. As you mentioned, part of this is making sure that that doesn't get become diffuse and goes somewhere where it might not have the best fit or the most greatest bedside manner, for lack of a better term. How does that typically work in these arrangements? The management of the space and the clients, et cetera?
Yeah, so it's really important to do that well. And when it's done well, it's done by organizations that have a deep commitment to what we call as housing first principles that are very kind of tenant-centered. And you gotta have the resources. You know, in some parts of this country and under this current federal administration, Housing First has gotten a bad name. A lot of us would say that's because they're calling it like Housing First Light. As in, you know, you can't just kind of drive by the property and like, oh yeah, everyone looks fine, right? You have to be able to be there, build trust, engage people, and focus on what it's going to take for them to develop good tenancies and move forward in their lives. So yeah, management is key. I don't know, did I fully answer your question? Or
If I could just quickly follow up, but is it typical for, you know, a nonprofit that would finance this to seek out another nonprofit, for example, that could do the day-to-day management?
Yeah, there's kind of all of the above in terms of the models. So, you know, kind of I think across the spectrum, across the state, there are some who do all of this themselves. There's some, like let's take the example of Pine Street Inn. Folks are familiar. They've now reached a point like they will only do large projects. They use large affordable housing developers who develop, and then they do the service management. The examples I flipped through, I talked about master leasing. So my organization, we have an arm where we have staff who specialize in the tenancy support, landlord relations side, and then we partner with a member organization that handles the services. And those are examples where we didn't need an outside developer because, you know, that was happening privately. So there are all kinds of models of this that are out there.
Councilor Klingon.
Thank you, Madam President. Sort of piggybacking off Councilor Burnley's questions. So, there's different organizations that, we know a lot of the names, like you said, Bay Cove, and different entities that would be sort of, the go-tos for supporting these type of housing situations. What's the sort of cutoff in terms of the type of individuals that would live in a place? I know that services can vary, so if you have somebody, say if you had somebody with dementia, what would happen? Is that, or would they be referred to a different type of living situation, like a memory care unit or something like that?
Yeah, that's a really relevant question, because now with the aging of the population, one of the things that's happened, so for one, the fastest growing group entering homelessness are people 55 and older. Two is we have the aging of those in supportive housing, right? And ideally, in most instances, you're building a partnership with your elder service agencies, and people in that situation would move on to a nursing home. But there definitely can be a period of time where you have to bring in those outside services. I won't take you deep in the weeds of the policy stuff, but we're working more now with the state agency around elder affairs to add more of those kinds of services. So sometimes people can stay in place, and sometimes it's a matter of they move on elsewhere.
Last question, Madam President, through you. That leads me to my last question, which is, who makes those decisions? Once somebody is housed, and that's currently their home, who makes the decision as to whether or not somebody is a good fit for a unit or not?
After they are housed, or before? Okay. Some of it's going to come down to, it can take a lot of the advocating, negotiating to get that next resource for them, or figure out whether you can bring in enough resource in place. Fortunately, typically it's rare that you have people who have such advanced dementia or something who are in supportive housing. Usually people would get moved on. And sometimes there are other tough decisions, people who may have to leave for hospitalization. Some people end up in jail. So it's kind of more a case by case. I didn't touch on, though, also how people get selected. We have made progress here around the state and really around the country. So there is what's called this coordinated entry system, where you kind of are looking at folks based on their level of disability and level of homelessness, and some input about their circumstances that determines that.
Okay, thank you. That's actually really helpful to know. And I hear you and not want to do a deep dive. This is definitely intriguing stuff here, and it's certainly complicated, as these type of situations are often, but certainly worth the good outweighs the bad and the complicated, in my opinion. So I look forward to finding situations in Somerville where we could add supportive housing. So thanks for doing this.
Sure. Councilor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Madam President. Through you to our speaker. I had a sort of specific question here. It might be sent to committee. I just wanted to ask it here while we had you here with us. We have a couple of places in our city geographically that are hotspots for homelessness. From your experience, is it, on the siting side, is it beneficial, neutral, or counterproductive to site supportive housing near a hotspot of homelessness?
Yeah, that's... I think that can vary. There are certainly the challenges some people will have of, let's say, part of that hotspot is drug activity, and people move into housing, and then, are they feeling guilty, or they're just connected with their former friends, peers, and the impact that has. But, I'm thinking, comes to mind now a project we were involved in Lowell that is very much near a hotspot, and things are going really well in that housing. It's well managed. So it's probably not one answer to that. And I think, unfortunately, also comes down to where is there the availability and, the siting issues. I mean, hey, I'm in Ward 6, and I'm really concerned about neighbors at the end of my street and how they're reacting simply about moving the shelter a few blocks. So I know often, there are limited number of places you can look. But it's also another reason why it really helps when you have a blend of a project and scattered units. You can move people around, you have more flexibility.
All right. So we're going to send this to Housing and Community Development, which I know is meeting next week, to continue the conversation. And Joyce, just wanted to say thank you so much for being here and for this presentation this evening. Really appreciate it. Oh, sorry. Councilor Mbaugh, I apologize. Sometimes peripheral vision.
No worries. I just want to thank you for, I'm very supportive of this. This is, and it's all new knowledge, to me, to see that we don't even have something like this, but I think we can always try to integrate it with our other housing initiatives. So one thing that I'm curious about is our language and accessibility barrier considered in your outreach, services and resident engagement. Like, do you integrate that piece to be able to capture, everyone that you're trying to get?
Yeah, so it depends on the community. So, I kind of flipped through, showed some pictures, for example, in Chelsea, which has a large Latino population. And, I'm really pleased that actually that what was once the Chelsea Y, now Chelsea Commons, there's been quite a significant shift, a much higher Latino population in that supportive housing because of a concerted effort to reach out and identify people in the community. We've also really been looking at the issue of race and access to supportive housing, and it feels like light years ago, but not that long ago, our very own federal government and HUD was advancing the effort to do that. And we're not giving up, that work and that fight. So yeah, that's very much kind of consciously top of mind as we look at advancing supportive housing.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Okay. All right. Thank you again. This item is approved and sent to Housing and Community Development.
And one last thing, I realize I didn't put my contact information on here, but feel free, I'm happy to engage with anyone, answer any questions. So,
great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Appreciate it. Next item, Madam Clerk.
The next item we'll be taking out of order is item 4.11, a resolution by Councilors Klingon, Pineda-Neufeld, and McLaughlin, supporting Teamsters Local 25 in the labor dispute with Stop and Shop.
Councilor Klingon.
Madam Clerk, would you mind reading the resolution? It's short, fairly short.
And the whole council would like to sign on to this.
Whereas Stop and Shop's 1.1 million square foot distribution center in Freetown, Massachusetts is a critical component of their supply chain in New England, and whereas the facility sits on over 150 acres and delivers perishable and non-perishable goods to more than 200 Stop and Shop locations across Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island, and whereas Ahold Delhaize, the parent company of Stop and Shop, has made clear its intent to close the Freetown distribution center unless Teamsters Local 25 members accept drastic concessions on their health care, a benefit they have relied on for over 40 years, And whereas the escalating crisis threatens the livelihoods of over 900 hardworking Massachusetts residents and potentially the food security of our region. And whereas many of these workers have dedicated decades of service to this company, ensuring that New England families have access to fresh food and essential goods. And whereas this fight is not just about a single warehouse, it is about protecting good-paying union jobs, standing up to corporate exploitation, and ensuring that companies receiving tax incentives from Massachusetts do not turn their backs on our workers. And whereas Ahold Delhaize and Stop & Shop have accepted millions in local tax breaks to build and operate the Freetown facility, but are now prepared to walk away from it entirely, now, therefore, be it resolved that the Somerville City Council recognizes Stop & Shop's decision to weaponize job loss in order to force workers into a substandard healthcare plan is not only unjust, but also a direct attack on the very communities they serve. And be it further resolved that the Somerville City Council supports Teamsters Local 25 should they decide to take action, including extending picket lines to every Stop & Shop store in New England, and demands that Ahold Delhaize and Stop & Shop return to the bargaining table in good faith.
Councilor Clean.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, Madam President, through you. Colleagues, we are once again being asked to stand shoulder to shoulder with our one of our fine locals, Local 25, whereas their benefits are under attack again by an international corporation, as was mentioned, Ahold Delhaize, which is the parent company of Stop & Shop, has basically threatened to shut down the Freetown plant. As was mentioned, 900 workers currently work there. And I got an update tonight. They're currently back at the table, but they had been away from the table all week. The company had walked away from bargaining and from negotiations with this looming threat of closing as of tomorrow, Friday. So the Teamsters asked us if we would support their efforts. Of course I do. And I'd like to this evening to sponsor one of the members of the political organizing team. But I first just want to say that, you know, Somerville is 4.3 square miles. We don't have many, I guess we have a decent amount of grocery stores, but we have 2 Stop & Shops, both of which serve our most vulnerable communities, one right by Clarendon Hill, the other right in East Somerville. These are lifeline grocery stores to many of our constituents, and not only that, but they support many of our residents in terms of employment. And you know, with the cost of everything rising, constantly eggs and all the different costs of living, I just think it's egregious that this company is going to hold these jobs hostage. And one of the things that really stuck out to me in this press release that they sent out was that it says, "It is our hope that Teamsters Local 25 collaborates with us to maintain operations at Freetown and support the strategy we have in place to ensure the long-term health of our brand." Now, you know, I don't know if anybody sees the irony of this attack on healthcare benefits to support the health of a brand, but last I checked, brands don't need, you know, medicine and different treatments to basically stay alive. So I just find this completely disgusting. And you know, in 2019, I walked those picket lines with the workers of Stop & Shop. I know that 1445 is prepared, as other unions are prepared to respect these picket lines if Local 25 does set up picket lines at every Stop & Shop. Just to mention that there are 117 in Massachusetts, 25 in Rhode Island, 83 in Connecticut. That's thousands of workers who are prepared to stand with the Teamsters in this fight. So thank you all for signing on, and thank you for my 2 colleagues who have respective Stop & Shops in their wards, President Panay Neufeld and Ward 1 Councilor Matt McLaughlin. And if you'll all indulge, I'd like to ask if it's okay that we support Paul Weiskell from Local 25 political organizing team to say a few words on behalf of Local 25.
Welcome.
So you're right that brands can't get cancer, but brands can become a cancer upon communities. So first of all, thank you, Council. My name is Paul. I'm a member of Teamsters Local 25. I'm also a Somerville resident and a Somerville worker. I wanted to start by talking about my Somerville union story. So I come out of the moving and storage industry. I worked at 2 companies in Somerville. One was a union company and one was not. I started at I'm not going to name names. I started at a non-union company. I was making $12.50, no benefits, being told to sprint up and down stairs. I worked through that winter where we got like 10 feet of snow. But then I had the opportunity to go to a union moving company. Overnight, my wages, compensation, benefits more than quadrupled. And the only difference was it was a company a mile down the road, 2 miles down the road. The only difference was it was a union company. So I know firsthand what that union difference means to workers, people, families. And now I'm an organizer. Now I get to help people go through that same kind of transformation from non-union to union workers. But tonight we're here asking for your support to not create union jobs, but save union jobs. So there's these 900 Stop and Shop Teamsters down in Freetown. They're the workers who distribute and service the 2 Stop and Shops here in Somerville. And they've been good union jobs for generations. So as was mentioned, Stop and Shop and the parent company have essentially given an ultimatum saying, give up your health care or we're going to close this company down, ship the jobs out of state to non-union companies. These workers were essential workers, are essential workers. They delivered throughout the pandemic. As workers who worked throughout the pandemic, they know what it's like. They know how important healthcare is. So and this fight isn't just about these 900 workers and this one warehouse, but it's also about the communities that these workers serve. It's about the corporate greed, the employer offensive that we're seeing kind of intensify over the last few months and years. So what we're asking for here tonight is support. I think as we see kind of institutions eroding and being attacked, now more than ever, it's important to support workers who are standing up, fighting back. And it's just part of the continued support that we've gotten from the city of Somerville, whether it's about Uber and Lyft, whether it's about Amazon, whether it's about UPS. These workers in their fight are going to benefit from knowing that the communities that they serve have their back. And whether it's this resolution or whether it's hopping on yet another picket line, we ask for your support and thank you for your support.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Just a couple quick thoughts. So I, of course, live in East Somerville, where the Stop and Shop is. There's 2 buildings that are within walking distance for me. One is Stop and Shop, the other is Teamsters Local 25 in Sullivan Square. And as Councilor Klingon pointed out, we were on the picket lines in 2019. That's the easiest supermarket for me to go to. I go to it multiple times a week. I do value it in this community. And in 2019, I said, I'm not shopping here until they resolve their contract. Within, I think, a couple weeks, they resolved these issues because it is a very valuable supermarket. You go down there, even when Stop and Shop was closing other businesses, that parking lot is full all the time. So if they're going to treat their workers like this and treat them like they're a asset to be passed around and that it's ruining their brand, we can help ruin the brand in Somerville as well and hopefully encourage them to be better neighbors and better employers.
Councilor Struzzo.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to say that we very much stand with you. And I also want to commend Councilor Klingon for this resolution. The way that it is written is really beautiful. And, well, whomever wrote it, I think you didn't write it. All right, he admits he didn't write it. It's written beautifully and really exemplifies all the points that we're trying to make and why it is so vitally important. And I remember in 2019, I was standing with Stop and Shop workers, and I remember that when when this happened, when we were right out there in the picket line, it was right before Passover, and Stop and Shop has an excellent Passover section, and I remember just across the state just saying, don't go to Stop and Shop right now. I know this election's great, just wait, don't shop yet, don't shop, because we stand with you, and those little details matter. And then when Stop and Shop did the right thing, then okay, fine, and just happened that Passover ended, and then it was a lot of Passover clearance items, and I got so many matzo ball mixes. Anyhow, point being that we stand with you, and we're ready to. I'm ready to go right back out there and stand with you again. I think this is the behavior of Stop and Shop is disgusting, and clearly just doesn't treat workers with respect. Fine, let's go. Thank you very much.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Madam President. As the Ward 2 counselor, I'm a Demoulas guy, but I'm happy to go to Ward 1 Stop and Shop to be on the line again like it was in 2019, and I think you got the whole council's support. Thanks for being here tonight.
Okay, this item's approved. Thank you. Next item.
The next item being taken out of order is item 7.13. Request of the mayor, requesting approval of the municipal election calendar for 2025.
Yes, colleagues, we are being asked to approve this tonight. We have Chairman Salerno with us to answer questions. Chairman.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here this evening. I assume you all have a copy of the calendar. And if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to chat with you about it. I would just like to point out that we're probably duplicating what we've done for the past several elections, municipal elections, and having nomination papers be available the first Monday in May. We've done it for the last 20, 30 years. And then we follow all the guidelines that we're supposed to up to preliminary date, which this year you have already approved as September 16th. Now, even though you, as a body, approved the preliminary date as September 16th, I thought I should come back and give you a copy of the entire calendar.
Great. Questions? No questions. This item's approved. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you all. Have a great evening.
Next item.
The next item will be item 8.2, which is an officer's communication from the Director of Parking, responding to item 250084 regarding the citywide parking and curb use study.
Great. We have Director Rinfret here this evening, and I know a presentation attached to this item as well, so I will pass this over to Director Rinfret.
Good evening. Thank you, everyone, for having me here tonight to bring you up to date on the citywide parking and curb use study. We've done a lot. Okay. So you all have a copy of this. I did attach it to the agenda. So we'll just go through it. I don't know if they're going to put up the slides or not, but what is the purpose of the study? Our priority is to create a more sustainable, equitable, and accessible transportation network. Front door on-street parking at all destinations cannot be guaranteed if Somerville wants to achieve this vision. Street space accounts for more than a quarter of Somerville's land area, and a large portion is dedicated to vehicle parking and storage. We've been transforming more of our street space to create safer options for all users and more space for people walking, rolling, biking, and taking transit. This has increased the range of priorities competing for our limited curb space. We embarked on this study from 21 to 22 to help produce a set of recommendations and guide how we manage this limited curb to meet the demands and goals of the future. What's included in the study? Study goals and process, key findings from engagement, curb regulations and inventory analysis, curb utilization analysis, parking and curb profile summaries, key data, key issues and opportunities, curb prioritization framework, And all this can be read in the Somerville report at somervillema.gov/parking study. So the recommendation themes are to strengthen the parking administration and operations, reallocate curb space to support community goals, adjust regulations to better manage parking demand, and revise permit program to meet community goals. So there was a matrix that was created by the consultant, and the strategies are intended to be flexible. This is a menu of options. Not all strategies may be implemented, but all have value. Later strategies are dependent on earlier ones. Technology and staffing investments are key to enabling long-term goals. And as we go through this, I just want you to all realize that this is a living document, so things change, priorities change, obviously technology changes, so all these things are taken into account based on budget and what we can do. So I just am pulling out some of the key things that we've done so far. A1 in the matrix was to clarify curb management roles. A new project manager position was created through the Parking Department's FY24 budget and filled in October 2023, and I thank the council for that. The project manager oversees department curb management strategies and participates in regular planning meetings with mobility and engineering divisions. The mobility and engineering divisions have increased staffing capacity, which has allowed greater coordination among all three departments. The interdepartmental teams are working to define clear roles and responsibilities to enhance interdepartment coordination. And I have to say that our three departments are very close and communicate very well, and I'm very fortunate to work with all of them. The next one is implement a curb prioritization framework. When the city is redesigning a street or a street segment, we look at the surrounding land uses and the area context to rethink the curb management. This includes talking with businesses about delivery operations and customer patterns, working with nearby schools to understand school arrival and dismissal patterns, conducting parking utilization analysis, and more. To help make curb management more effective, the study produced guidelines for prioritization in commercial and residential areas. This prioritization deprioritizes long-term storage space and creates more priority for mobility options and people, such as protected bike facilities, bus lanes, pickup and drop-off space, and deliveries. The city pairs understanding of local context with the prioritization framework to develop new parking proposals for the street design. So this is a list of the commercial mixed-use areas and the residential areas, and the definitions for each are on the back in the glossary, which I think is a good idea to look at because it can be confusing otherwise. The next one, A11, was to implement design standards to reduce modal conflicts and integrate curb needs into all roadway redesigns. The Mobility Division regularly references NATCO, and NATCO stands for National Association of City Transportation Officials, for new city street design. Critical needs for access are identified during redesign projects, and curb use needs are an important part of all the redesign projects. Staff collects data and creates maps of proposed curb regulations using a platform such as GIS, which is Geographical Information System, during these street redesign projects. The city previously had a dedicated curb platform, CORD, but the vendor ceased operations. But we did get a lot of data from CORD when we did that initial study, which was very enlightening to all of us. The city has not identified a new platform to best fit our needs. We are always looking for new technology, and it is growing so rapidly and changing by leaps and bounds so often that it's hard to actually pinpoint exactly what we should be using, which would be best bang for your buck and something that's going to be around for the long term. Like I said, this is a living document, so we have to be able to always upgrade and re-put in the information, because the curb is constantly changing. So what you have this month in the Traffic Commission rules and regulations could change next month in the traffic rules and regulations. So it is a living document. Expand multimodal bus and bike infrastructure. The city published a bicycle network plan in 2023 and codified the plan with Safe Streets Ordinance in 2024. The plan provides a vision for an 88-mile network of protected bike lanes and traffic-calmed neighborhoods over the next 20 years. Within the plan, the city created a priority network of 30 miles of protected bike lanes and 10 miles of neighborways to be installed by 2030. Since publishing the plan, the city has already installed over 4 miles of protected bike lanes. A2 is continue to expand loading zones and improve loading zone request procedure and ensure adequate activities for commercial and passenger loading activities. Loading zones continue to be a key consideration of street design projects. The city has also evaluated small business commercial operation requests on a reoccurring basis. The parking department and the mobility division have collaborated over the past 2 years to streamline loading zone request, evaluation, and implementation process. The city rebanded the loading zone signage and began installing new signs throughout the city surrounding Davis Square, including Davis Square, Teal Square, Ball Square, Union Square, and Winter Hill. City staff block walk to local businesses and learn more about businesses' operational needs and street projects, and promote new loading zones to businesses, the delivery drivers, and customers. These loading zones are also very important to our new way of doing business with Uber and Lyft and all the delivery services that we have throughout the city. We rebranded the loading zone so it wouldn't look so scary. The other loading zones always said tow zone, and it was really kind of a scary sign. So this sign we did it with pictures so that people would understand it, and hopefully people would choose to park there rather than park illegally in a bus stop or on a curb. So these seem to be working out pretty well. C7 is to ensure adequate access for customers of local businesses. We continue to prioritize installing more loading zones and accessible parking in commercial areas. When we are constructing new protected bike lanes, crosswalks, bus facilities, or clear corner markings, we aim to relocate business and customer-focused parking spaces to adjacent side streets. We look for opportunities to expand meter parking where appropriate. An example of this is the new meters installed on Bonner Ave and Union Square during the East Washington Clear Corners implementation in 2024. This next one is labeled A6, but it's actually B7. Ensure adequate access for employees of local businesses. The parking department continues to administer the business parking permit program, allowing employees to park in specific resident areas in proximity to their jobs. We recognize this can be challenging in an environment when local business operations may be changing, such as new businesses moving in or employee pattern can change. We continue to promote business permits and business visitor permits to businesses through direct outreach or when engaging with businesses during annual permit renewal. We continually evaluate business parking permit capacity in areas undergoing parking reduction due to streetscape projects. The city also works to increase the range of safe and available transportation options for employees. C6, increase accessible parking. We aim for at least 5% of available curbside to be regulated accessible in commercial areas, greater than the state and federal guidelines. The city generally adds net new accessible spaces in key locations with new street redesign projects. The parking department continues to work with the ADA coordinator and traffic commission to administer the resident accessible space program. We have installed 11 new spaces in front of residents' home in 2024. A7, procure management and enforcement technology, and A10, pilot automated enforcement technologies. The city partnered with Safety Stick to install automated parking enforcement cameras at first in the state of Massachusetts, and we actually made the cover of Parking Today, which is a national and international magazine. The city piloted the installation on Elm Street and Davis Square. where we've seen higher rates of illegal parking in the bus stop, accessible space, and on crosswalks. We expanded the program to include the bus lanes on Holland Street and bus stops in Magoon Square. We will continue to prioritize new safety stick installations in priority bus stops and other locations that we see higher amounts of illegal parking causing safety issues. We also expanded parking payment options for metered spaces to include 4 apps, credit cards, and coins. So we try to make it as easy as possible for our constituents to pay the meters so that they don't get tickets. It's in a perfect world, we would never write a ticket in the city of Somerville. Implement flexible curbside regulations, add meters to most popular 2-hour spaces to encourage turnover. The city continues to monitor and evaluate effectiveness of the 24/7 loading zones versus the time-limited loading zones throughout the city. We implement more metered parking through the street redesign projects or in smaller installations based on business and resident feedback. Projects to date include Holland Street, College Ave, Ball Square, East Broadway, and Bonner Ave. C4, enhance wayfinding to public parking facilities. The city installed a wayfinding sign for the Bonner Vista parking lot that displays the number of available spaces. We've also worked with the Union Square Main Streets and East Somerville Main Streets to install wayfinding signs to direct people from the new Green Line stations to business districts. Add C5, add off-street and on-street electric vehicle charging stations. The Office of Sustainability and Environment has identified 254 off-street EV charging stations generated through projects that have been issued permits and gone through their sustainability review. The city commissioned a sitting strategy in 2023 to identify best locations for new chargers. We applied for grants that would add 10 new dual port stations to our municipal public charging inventory. The city adopted specialized energy code that requires 1 parking spot with a level 2 EV charger per unit in a 1 and 2 family development. 20% of the spots in multifamily buildings must have EV charging stations. D4, require unbundling off-street parking spaces and seek shared parking opportunities during new development. Unbundling off-street parking spaces from the sale or lease of dwelling units or non-residential space is a standard requirement for all new developments subject to the mobility management plan. Greater than 20 units, greater than 50,000 square feet, or greater than 50 employees. Mobility management commitments are enforced via an annual reporting once the building is occupied. District parking maximums are in place in many development sub-areas. Mobility recommends conditions to the Somerville Planning Board that require all new parking garages at large commercial developments to be operated on as a commercial parking facility open to the public. City can track parking facilities of development subject to the mobility management plan for greater than 20 units, greater than 50,000 square feet, or greater than 50 employees. And we will receive annual reports of occupancy and travel patterns at as these projects become occupied. Collaborate with ride-hail vendors to manage demand and operations. Collaboration with ride-hail vendors still remains challenging. In high-demand areas in the city, prefers to use multi-short-term passenger and commercial regulation rather than space dedicated specifically to ride-hail vehicles. So originally in the city, we were the first around to actually make spaces for these ride-hail vehicles. And we found, that worked for a little bit, but it didn't work all that great. So now we've tried to turn those into loading zones. And so we've learned from what we've done, and that's the purpose that we do everything. Like, we have to be able to change things when we do things and learn from our mistakes, or just you have to try. And if it doesn't work, you can always change it. We continue to promote 5-minute passenger plate feature of the loading zone to ride-hail and food delivery vehicles. We incorporate graphics geared towards these vehicles and new loading zone signs, and you can see the picture is pretty simple. And we were able to remove previous ride-hail zones that were not working as intended on either side. Formalize and improve communication process and complete and refine digitization strategy. The parking department continually reviews the website and makes improvement wherever possible. Parking, mobility, and engineering staff regularly coordinate on developing standard public messaging and constituent responses to ensure accuracy and consistency across departments. The city tracks a number of metrics listed in the recommendations A5, but more work is needed. Staff regularly meet with vendors to learn about current data collection and evaluation technology. Formalize and streamline parklet requests and permitting process. The city has created a permanent licensing process for parklets. Parking collaborated with engineering and mobility to improve parking restriction requests process ahead of the parklet installations. Parking, mobility, and engineering coordinate on the relocation of loading zones, accessible spaces that conflicted with parklets to ensure space for both uses are maintained. Other recommendations. There are a number of recommendations from the study that are not priority at this time or have higher barriers to implementation. Barriers may include budgetary considerations, staffing levels, and technology procurement. We want to focus on changing the behavior and expanding alternate transportation options for all Somerville residents and visitors. We recognize that this process will take time, and we will continue to work towards meeting our goals. And I know you will probably have many questions, and I'm here.
Thank you, Director. Councilor Yankimbin.
Madam President, through you, I just want to confirm Director Rinfrit is on the cover of Parking today. I can zoom in. I want to thank you for this update.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
This is an incredibly helpful update. I really appreciate the work that went into it. This is something we get questions about all the time, and it's incredibly helpful to have something to point to say, this is what the department has been working on. I have just one question. I assume this is going to go to committee so we can have discussion about it in the future, but just for tonight, one of the recommendations, low priority, but I know it's something the public has asked us about a lot, is to increase the price of on-street parking permits. Is that something that is actively being pursued right now?
Through the chair, no, it's not. As we take more and more parking away, we're really focusing on changing people's behavior. I've seen that, not that the parking permits have decreased, but they're not increasing. And due to the fact that we're very transient in the city, that is showing that it's a good sign. I do notice that the new resident moving in permits, as you know, we give every resident that moves into the city 1 month time to change over their registration. So they get a free permit for that first month. And I do see a decrease in those. So we're starting to see a change in behavior that people may not be bringing vehicles, but people need to bring vehicles too. There are some people that they're required to have vehicles, and we're trying to balance the needs. Parking is very passionate, as we all know. So it would be hard for me to justify increasing the amount of the permit and decreasing the amount of space people can park in. So to me, it's like eggs. Like, they're more expensive, then there's less of them. So.
Okay, I'm sure we'll have plenty to follow up on this. Thank you very much.
Councilor Scherzo.
Thank you, Madam President, to our Director of Parking. Thank you for this and for your work on this. I know every time that I have a conversation with you, you're clearly on top of your game, and you know the city well, of course, and you know neighborhood by neighborhood just what's going on, and I know this is an issue that you take very seriously. I do have a couple of questions about some of this. Now, the original parking study came out was done in 2020 and 2021, or correct? And I think it was all done online because this was the center of the pandemic.
Well, we started it earlier, but it took longer to complete it because of the pandemic. So the study lasted a lot longer, and things changed. The whole way of everyone changed. It's a lot different today than it used to be. There's less people, there's more people staying home and working from home.
Right.
And there's also more deliveries than there was in the past. So that's why I say this is a living document that always has to be revisited, and that's why we're always watching the trends.
Right, to that point, because as I recalled, all of the data collection was done online, and this is when, as to your point, and where I wanted to go with this is that, as you mentioned, this is a living document, and all that data was collected online during the center of the pandemic when everyone was home. However, that is if you had internet access to access the study. And we know, the counselors that were in this room on the ground during that there was still a gap in those that were able to get to the internet access. And so there's a class divide still that we're not addressing. And as this is a living document, I'm hoping that we can talk to, because I hear from a lot of residents that still, they don't take studies online. They may take a study or answer questions or a survey in different forms, but online is not. So I still hear some voices that are brought forward with this in this parking study, and I'm sure some of us here in the community as well. I, of course, want modernization and to get people out of cars and incentivize them to get out of cars. But I know for a fact that if there's just a population of us that will not spend the time or don't have internet access to take these surveys online or be part of this study. And so I'm asking if you will, as this living document is being modified, that you will take class into consideration, and those that don't have the ability to do everything online or won't, and when we can anticipate that some of our lower income residents or those with internet gaps, how their voices will be brought forward in this as well. That was a question through you.
So you're talking the survey. I thought
Correct.
You said study.
The
I'm
survey,
sorry.
correct.
Okay. So we could certainly do a mail survey. I can work with Somerset with that. I believe there was some mail-in surveys as well back then, but we could probably do another survey. It's very difficult to get people to return those. It's a very low percentage that does come back. Online surveys seem to actually have more people respond, but to your point, you're absolutely correct. Maybe there's a way we can leave surveys at different places. Maybe we can deal with schools, or I'm sure there's a lot more thought that could go into that. I agree.
Madam President, through you, for instance, your neighbors' Council on Aging. We know for a fact that a large percentage of many of the residents visitors of the Council on Aging most likely did not answer this study, or did not answer the surveys. Yeah.
And to that, I was at the Council on Aging just 2 weeks ago, and we are working closely with the Council on Aging and listening to them, listening to their concerns, and that's going to be a regular meeting with them. So I sat with the board just 2 weeks ago, and they were very receptive, and they were very happy we were there.
Pardon me, yeah, Madam Chair, through to our director, exactly, and because they want to be part of the conversation as well, and they want to be part of the design and modernization as well, and I do too, and we want to include their voices, and how that changes, and with that, like on our C6 section, we aim for at least 5%. Can we at least aim for 10% of ADA accessible parking? I know that's way out of, I understand that. That's greater than state and federal guidelines, but that is something that I'm sure many of our colleagues here is that ADA accessibility is an issue, and we aren't there yet. And I know that it is 5%, but are we even there close to that at this point in Somerville?
We're aiming towards that, but that in the business districts, we're aiming towards 5%. In the residential parking areas, we do have the residential parking, handicap parking program that folks can apply to, and we then go to Traffic Commission, and the Traffic Commission approves the spaces, and then it gets advertised, and then the spaces get implemented. So every time that Mobility and Engineering does look at the redesign of a street, or a central business district, that is always in the forefront. What are we going to do about accessible parking? And where are we putting accessible parking? So that is something that's always looked at, and there has been an increase in the accessible parking in these areas. New Washington Street, we put a new accessible parking space, and we did have some pushback from the community on that, which was the accessible parking space did go in. So,
Madam Chair, just one more point, and then I'll stop. Madam Chair, through you too, Director, thank you. One last thought just on the bus lanes. We need better control of them. I see a lot of people that aren't in a bus speeding through that, and the bus lane on Broadway scares the heck out of me because it's a bike and a bus lane, and I see cyclists in the bus lane, the bike bus lane, which they should be in. The cyclists we should be, that is what it's for. But then I see a car speeding fast because they're smarter than everyone else trying to get ahead of the traffic, and I am scared that someone's going to get hurt or killed. And I have asked alongside Councilor Klingon has as well, just for better control of the area, the sticks, monitoring anything. I don't want someone to get hurt, and it is a constant concern. So.
Through the chair, yes, I totally agree with you. In the parking department, we do not do moving violations. That would be a function of the police.
Yes.
But if somebody is parked in a bus lane, we certainly want to ticket those people. And it has worked out wonderful on Holland Street when the red line was shut down for a short time last summer. That really has changed behavior down there so that that bus lane is now a lot more clear, and the MBTA is very happy with the city of Somerville. They love coming through our city because they have better clearance for a lot of these. And now that we have the prioritized signalization, that's also helped the buses. So the better that we can make our public transportation, that's also going to work towards our goal of changing behavior. We need a reliable transportation so people would consider maybe not having a car or not having a second car. And feeling safe on the streets is also huge in making people feel safe. I actually ride a bike now, and I understand that if I don't feel safe, I'm not going to ride my bike. In the past, I didn't. Now I feel safe, a lot safer, especially taking my bike to work. Luckily, I have Broadway, which is basically protected, so thank you for the question.
Yeah. Drew, and yes, Madam Chair, through you too, Director, yes, I am aware that traffic versus police, but what I'm saying is that there has to be some kind of collective decision to make that area safer, because that isn't that bus lane, bike/bus lane is not a protected bike lane. It is a bike lane. So both buses are speeding and cars are speeding, and then bikes are there too, or scooters. I hear you that it is your job to ticket and be on patrol and make sure, and yeah, like my classic example is Leone's on a Friday night. There's nothing, it's just a double parking lot. It's just parking, and then of course it's a cluster mess. So we need more solutions. I do feel it's still a unsafe area. So I'm asking for just some kind of collaboration or something on that, some kind of steps to make it safer.
And Councilor, I want to focus still on the study. This seems like it could be a future order, or if there's not one already that exists. But I see Director Rawson that wants to pipe in.
Thank you, Madam President. We'd be happy to have a discussion in committee about the new legislation that's going to permit our partners at the MBTA to have bus-mounted automated enforcement. We've been talking with them on a business planning standpoint, technology standpoint, and a civil rights and equity protection standpoint to make sure that they can deploy these evidence-based tools in places like Broadway, Winter Hill with minimal unintended consequences. We expect them to be moving forward on that this calendar year, so we'll be happy to update the council in more detail.
Thank you. You all set? Okay, I have Councilor Burnley, then Councilor Scott, then Councilor Klingon, then Councilor McLaughlin in the order. Burnley up first.
Thank you. Through you, I appreciate the questions that are asked. I'm sure Director Rawson also appreciates some of these questions as well. And I'll just say about the Broadway, going on to Maine, that's where it happens, because I ride my bike up that hill when I'm strong enough inside. And that's where the danger really is for a cyclist. I just one question to the director, which is typical of my conversations when she comes to the council. I noticed, as you mentioned, the plans change. This is a living document. There are recommendations that were initially a part of this that we are not focusing on as a city. As a counselor, I'm just curious, is there any way that the council can be helpful in moving any of these initiatives forward.
Through the chair, I certainly would welcome a conversation. I'm always available. You can call me, we can talk, for sure.
Councillor Scott, you're up next.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and thank you, Director Renfret, for the presentation. I echo my colleague from Ward 3. Very helpful. I just had one question on slide 19 when you were talking about the unbundled parking. That's a big issue in Ward 2, obviously, with all these new garages that are being built. It says here that there's going to be reports available, annual reports of occupancy and travel patterns. Where can I take a look at those?
Through the chair, those reports go to the Mobility Division.
Madam President, through you, thanks for the question, Councilor. Staff have just received our first couple, and we're working on a public-facing dashboard, or kind of a way to publish that information. And as a little bit of a preview, some of these first development partners are achieving their required summer vision mode targets in terms of like 40% of the new workers in the R&D and the lab buildings traveling by car maximum. So we're doing the work. We're really excited about it, and we'll make sure to get things posted publicly as soon as we can.
Thank you very much for that. This is one of those things that I think really is going to not just shape policy in the city, but also development patterns. I mean, we have huge pushback from developers with these large projects. I know it's a Ward 2 issue, who say we can't possibly get a building financed without building 1,000 parking spaces. And if we can demonstrate that that's just not true in Somerville, it'll be a huge benefit. So the sooner we can see that kind of data in hard numbers, the more helpful that's going to be, especially the neighborhood council right now who's negotiating community benefits on a major project. I also just wanted to, since I'm not on traffic and parking, maybe I can ask this so that my colleagues, both at large and in the chair, can follow up on it. One of the unintended consequences of these unbundled parking is, it's very hard to negotiate community benefit, for example, to allow neighborhood residents access to those garages during snow emergencies. I know this is something I've talked about with mobility before, but also, like, we have an unintended consequence where there was a parking garage that for many years, because of the deed restriction, we have affordable units there. It requires the residents of that building to park in a garage. It's on Webster. But then that garage was bought by somebody who just built a lab building and then over doubled the price of parking there. So now we have residents in subsidized affordable units who are being basically priced out of living in the city because somebody bought their garage to hike their prices. So this is one of those things where, as we look at the unbundled parking spaces, I'm very interested to get as much of this data as possible. And so hopefully in committee, y'all can follow up on some of these intersections and what we can do as a council and as a city through regulation to hopefully ease that pinch. Thank you.
Councillor Clean.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you. One question I have is how is this study or the changing of the study as it needs adjusting based on changing circumstances? How is this informing the Traffic Commission on the issue of whether or not we're going to restrict permit parking passes for buildings, like now that we've gone 100% of the city? Resident permit passes, blocking of those for folks who move into buildings that are zero parking buildings.
Through you to the chair, that's already a policy in place. Anybody that's within a transit-oriented district will not be issued a parking permit unless they're signed off by the housing department, or they have an accessibility issue, or they have a change in circumstance. And all of that is either signed off at the housing level or the ADA level. And then once that waiver comes to us, then we can issue them a parking permit, but otherwise no one will get a parking permit at those locations. And that parking permit is just for a vehicle. They will not get any guest permits at all, so it would just be for their personal vehicle.
Thank you, Madam President. And through you, no, I understood that to be the case with the the transit areas and the 70%, but since we've gone to 100%, and I think there was also a question as to whether or not if say a two-family house wanted to build on a lot and not build a driveway, would that property be allowed to get a permit spot? That's also been worked out?
Through you to the chair, as I know now, if you're in an NR district and you're not in a transit area, you are entitled to a permit. So I have not heard any discussion further than that, but that would be something that would probably be with the planning or with mobility department.
Okay. I guess just, I can ask these questions another time. I guess the only last thing I'll ask is, because the reason why I'm bringing that up is because these questions all came up when we did move to 100% of the city being able to, build zero parking if they choose, and how that's going to, and how we're going to address the issue of accessible spots. When you talk about the 5%, is that 5% including the individual spots on the neighborhood streets, or are that strictly in residential districts?
Through you to the chair, I believe that's just for the commercial districts, but the residential districts will be dictated by our residents. So the residential area, for instance, we just approved 2 spaces on Glenwood this last traffic commission. So now there's 3 spaces on Glenwood. So that would really be dictated by the residents in what their needs are. But in the commercial district areas, the main commercial district areas is where they're trying to get to the 5%. As well as any of these new developments will also have to follow the ADA guidelines for all these new parking lots, as well as the parking lots that the city itself owns. Those are already at that level.
Thank you.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you to Director Renfred and also Director Rawson. I'm curious, how did you well, there's been an increase, the city has increased fire lanes, especially at intersections that have removed parking as a result, so the fire engine can get around the corner better. Was this calculated in your master plan here, and how is that calculated? Does that count as a lost parking spot?
Through you to the chair, any fire lane is given to us just through the fire chief. There has been some clear corners that have been implemented, and clear corners are for better visibility, for pedestrian safety. We have lost parking due to that, you're correct, and those have not, some of that has not gone into the new parking study. Those numbers have been adjusted, they will have to be adjusted, as well as all the bike lanes that have been implemented since this study was done. So that's why I say it's a living document. That's why we need to get somebody to always inventory this. It's a big job to keep up with this.
It definitely is, thank you. And that's just what I was getting at, is to make sure that we count these spots, because I understand it's a public safety issue, and I understand that there's already laws in place that say you can't park within certain feet of a curb, but a lot of people just see their parking spot gone. So they've been used to parking there for their entire lives or for years, and then the city removes the parking spots. And I'll give just 2 examples in my neighborhood where I promoted neighborways in the community for traffic calming measures and pedestrian safety. And I went door to door with city officials, with volunteers, and talked to people to promote this. And they say, oh, are you taking any parking? I said, no, we're not. And this was the city telling me that we weren't taking parking away. Then we find out that actually there are several spots being taken for a fire lane. So I'm bringing this up just to make sure that it's a part of the math, because people do consider it a parking spot, even if they don't, even if it's not technically allowed, and the city is being more aggressive with it. And I just want to make sure, like, I felt bad because I strongly supported this program, and I still do. But I had to tell a bunch of people who thought they weren't losing any parking that they were losing several parking spots. So I would just like that to be a part of the math when we're talking about adding and subtracting parking spaces.
Through you to the chair, so it is against the law to park within 20 feet of an intersection. So many times we don't catch every violator in the city. So these parking spaces weren't really parking spaces to begin with, so it wasn't really false what they told you. But I understand what you're saying. Thank you.
Councilor Ma.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you to Director Renfred. Thank you for your work, and to Director Rawson as well. I remember the good old days when we used to spend hours on Lower Street, for this parking study. I'm glad to see that at least we have something to work from. I guess one curious question is do you have a sense of, the different parking access across, different neighborhoods in the city?
Through the chair, I don't understand the question. What do you mean by parking assets?
Like, our neighborhoods are all different. I see Director Rawson is okay, wants to step.
Madam President, if I may, Council, I think I understand your question. Yes. So the parking study included a really substantial existing conditions inventory where we walked around and we coded every piece of curb in the entire city. We did it neighborhood by neighborhood. And then we also looked at occupancy. How frequently were different blocks overparked or underparked? We didn't cover all the city with that particular part of the study, but the parking study includes a neighborhood-by-neighborhood profile, so you can look up the difference between East Somerville, for example, and portions of Winter Hill or Magoon Square, the Hillside, Teal Square neighborhood versus the Union Square neighborhood. So yes, all of that is online on the parking study website.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you, Director Renfred. Thank you, Madam President.
Other questions, colleagues? Okay, thank you, Director Renfred and Rawson, for being here this evening. We'll place this on file and send a copy to Traffic and Parking for more discussion. Appreciate it. Thank you.
all.
Colleagues, I need a 5-minute break. That's okay. So we'll be back in 5 minutes.
To the regular order of business, and item 4.1, a resolution by Councilor Strezzo in support of transgender and gender diverse community members.
Councilor Strezzo.
I don't know, this is, what are we at, 9:30, 9:45? Okay. Here we go. So I put forward this resolution. I think it's really important right now that we're validating to the community, for our trans community, that I know you're under attack. I see you. We see you. We will stand with you, and we will fight with you and for you. And so, you colleagues, it's just some of the points on this. Worcester put forward a really great resolution a couple of weeks ago, and some of our community members were asking if we can do something here in Somerville. I think it is very important validation that we do acknowledge that we are a sanctuary city, and we're here to make sure that everyone feels that they can live here in dignity, in respect, and honor, and that fact that we work together as a community. And I just want to, it is 9:45, but this is no less meaningful, that I just go right to the last 3 paragraphs or so to just validate that we're going to commit, reaffirm our commitment to the LGBTQ+ rights and equal protections for transgender community members, and declare Somerville a sanctuary city and a place of safety for transgender and gender diverse people. And that Somerville City Council maintains that it should be the policy of the City of Somerville not to cooperate with federal and state policies intended to harm transgender and gender diverse people, and to ensure transgender and gender diverse people have access to health care, housing, education, and employment without fear of discrimination. That's all I want to say. It is. Thank you.
Councilors Wilson, Klingon, and Said would like to sign on, and Councilor Burnley.
Thank you, through the chair. Firstly, thank you to my colleague at large for bringing this up. I've also heard from community members who have reached out to say things are very scary right now. What more can we be doing? Who've brought up the example of Worcester to say, hey, has Somerville done anything to make itself a sanctuary for transgender folks and for gender-affirming healthcare specifically? And I've been glad to say that we have. Back in 2023, this council passed a resolution I put forward to make Somerville a sanctuary for trans folks, as well as an ordinance to do exactly what my colleague at large mentioned. In fact, we were the first city in the state to do so, and then the state then followed our lead, which I'm very happy when that happens. It speeds things right along. I've had some conversations with Councilor Tu Nguyen of Worcester, who's had a very difficult journey through their councilship as the first non-binary councilor in the Commonwealth, and who's targeting in their council has led to these additional efforts by Worcester to actually make their community feel safe for the queer community. I don't want to take too much credit. I did have a conversation with Councilor Nguyen and said, hey, yeah, look, Somerville, we've made it a sanctuary. And then I looked at the news and it was like, oh, Worcester is now a sanctuary for transgender healthcare. And I was like, Somerville, the seeds of Somerville's innovation do go far and wide. So I do want to kind of just note that connection there. And note one more thing, which is that there is an item on here, number 9.43, that we'll get to later, which is a communication from the Massachusetts Transgender Political Coalition in favor of our city doing exactly that, doing more to support folks by actually putting forward funds to help folks have identity document changes so that they're not coming out of pocket for about $500 when they want to affirm to themselves and the world who they are. And so I support the reaffirmation. I acknowledge there is more that we can do, and I will point out that we have organizations who are asking us to take more initiative. So thank you.
Councillor Ewan-Campbell and myself would like to sign on. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to thank my colleague as well for bringing this. And of course, I'd like to co-sponsor it. Also want to, it was mentioned briefly, but I want to make sure to give special thanks to our school committee, who passed at the start of February a very profound and helpful resolution that not just is a statement of values, but is a statement that's distributed to all the schools. Yeah, boy, there's a lot to be said about this topic. Hopefully, if there are continued discussions, the Mass Transpolitical Coalition is an incredible organization, and we would be well served to take their lead. Hopefully, we can work together to bring forward more measures. Appreciate it very much, and as I said, I'd like to co-sponsor. Thank you.
This item is approved. Next item.
Item 4.2 was a communication by Councillor Strezzo conveying budget priorities and requests for fiscal year 2026.
This will be placed on file with a copy to Finance. Next item.
Item 4.3 is an order by Councillor Ewan-Campbell that the Commissioner of Public Works update this council on how the municipal sidewalk clearing pilot program for Broadway and School Street is functioning during this challenging winter.
Councillor Ewan-Campbell.
Thank you, Madam President. Every winter, we hear from a lot of constituents who say, why doesn't the city clean the sidewalks? You clean all the streets, why don't you clean the sidewalks? And I want the public to know that we wish we could. This is something that all of us care really deeply about and have put a lot of time and energy thinking on, and the reality is that it's an extremely challenging logistical and financial heavy lift. That said, several years ago, we did successfully get a pilot program up and running that the city would increase enforcement and then ultimately clear the sidewalks on Broadway and School, their entirety. And since we got that pilot, we really haven't had a winter that was bad until now. So we've gotten annual updates in the past of kind of how things have been going. And they've always been, well, it wasn't really put to the test. This winter, it clearly was. This ice storm was brutal. So I'm hoping to get an update on kind of lessons learned from this year. Obviously, all of us want to expand that to cover more of the city, prioritizing, areas of bus stops and business districts and really high traffic. So I think the more information we can get about this, the better. So if this could please go to Public Utilities, and I'd like to waive the readings of the next two items and have them referred to Traffic and Parking, please.
Okay, we'll send 4.3 to Public Utilities and Public Works and 4.4 and 4.5 to Traffic and Parking. Next item.
Item 4.6 is an ordinance by Councillor Klingon, amending Section 12.8A of the Code of Ordinances by inserting the words including abutting curb cuts, if applicable.
Councillor Klingon.
Thank you, Madam President, through you. As Councillor Ewan-Campbell said, many people wish that we could do all of the sidewalks in the city. I've also heard people mention the curb cuts, and the Mass Office of Disability, the guidance, basically the city is obviously in charge of the curb cuts as they are in charge of the sidewalks and everything, but then it's up to that municipality to dictate how that snow gets handled. In our case, and in many cases, it's by the abutting resident or business. But what it doesn't say in the ordinance specifically is reference a curb cut, and I'm not sure that many residents know that if their property abuts a curb cut on their, respective sidewalk, that they are supposed to clear out that curb cut. So I just wanted to codify this, and also, I want to have a discussion about it in committee. I'm not 100% sure if ISD has been ticketing. I don't think they have been, because again, there's nothing to back it up on the books. It doesn't say anything about curb cuts specifically. So I think it should say so. I think that we should educate people, and I think that we should then enforce the clearing of curb cuts. When it's been said to me, just the idea of like how many DPW workers we would, the sheer number of curb cuts, it would be impossible for the city to to get out and do. And, again, this, also the way we dictate what happens during snow removal includes bus stops and so on. In the past, we've kind of had this discussion, and no one from the city really came forward and made it particularly clear that it was on the city. The MBTA doesn't come out and clear their bus stops. The city is to clear those as well. So these are areas where we just need to tighten up and figure out how to get it done. And in the case, if somebody's house is in front of a bus stop, a residence, then obviously that would, but I guess I'm thinking more along the lines of the one on Broadway near, say, near the brewery and so on. There's certain circumstances that are kind of gray. There is a parking lot there, and I want these things clarified because our residents deserve to be able to stand at the bus stop and not be, standing on a 2-inch sheet of ice. And these things are all and can be all dictated through it in a fair and equitable way. So, legislative matters for that, please.
Okay, this item's approved and sent to legislative matters. Not approved, just sent to legislative matters. Sorry about that. Next item.
Item 4.7 is an order by Councilor Klingon that the Commissioner of Public Works and the Director of Public Space and Urban Forestry discuss the feasibility of removing snow from city playgrounds.
Councilor Klingon.
Thank you, Madam President. This has been brought up a few times by parents. I don't know exactly the protocols in place with regards to schoolyards. I believe they do clear the ground of the schoolyards. Obviously not necessarily the play structures, and I'm not suggesting the play structures, but other playgrounds that are not schoolyards essentially will end up with a 2-inch sheet of ice if we don't do so. I'm not sure that it's feasible, that we have the bandwidth or whatnot, but it's been brought to me a few times by parents, so I think we should have a discussion about it in Public Utility, Public Works. Thank you.
I would like to sign on, and Councilor Strozo would like to sign on, and Councilor Said as well, and Councilor McLaughlin. Go ahead.
I'd sign on as well, Madam President, and say that yes, we have the technology and we can build it, because I know we did it at the Edgeley School, and we have mini plows that can get into areas like this and clean it up. So yeah, it's totally doable.
And Councilor Mba and Wilson would like to sign on as well. Next item.
Item 4.8 is an order by Councilor Klingon that the Commissioner of Public Works discuss the process of clearing bike lanes of snow.
Sorry, that should have been sent to Public Utilities, Public Works, Madam Clerk, the last item. Yes. Okay, great. Councilor Klingon.
Thank you. I just want to have a discussion about this in Public Utility, Public Works. It sounds like the little plows are great at plowing the bike lanes, and that's, super important. But I guess the placement of the snow, and again, this may be unavoidable, but it's been brought up to me that people are concerned about the way the snow is being placed on the sidewalk and so on. So I just want to talk to DPW and committee. Thanks.
Okay, that item will be sent to Public Utilities, Public Works. Next item.
Item 4.9 is an order by Councilor Klingon that the Americans with Disabilities Act coordinator update this council on the current status of the Braille embosser.
Councilor Klingon.
Just send to equity, please.
Okay, that item is sent to equity. Next item.
Item 4.10 is an order by Councilor Klingon that the Director of Engineering update this council on the whereabouts of the Portland Loos.
Councilor Klingon.
Thank you, Madam President. This is a little bit facetiously worded because, and there may very well be an update, but I think this is one of those situations where it just occurred to me at some point what happened with those Portland Loos. I've been in committee meetings where, it sounded they were supposed to have been here already, and I know that it's not common practice for staff to sort of like enter their own, we basically have to go ask. And then, of course, behind the scenes, we can get that answer. But I think when we want to have a public discussion and we want the public to know what that answer is and what's going on with those Portland Loos that we all seem to be really interested in, and including the city seem to be interested in it. But yet, so in the instance where I don't go for that update behind the scenes, it essentially seems like, nothing's happening, or if we lost, whatever the case may be. I think the folks want to know, and I have heard since I put this, and I have heard a little that there is an update that to be had that has posed new challenges to the installation of the thing. But I'd like to have that discussion, and also on Public Utility, Public Works. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Wilson emphatically signs on, Councilor Mbaugh signs on, and Councilor Ewan-Campen, and Councilor Scott signs on as well.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, thank you to Councilor Klingon for putting this in. I myself, and I know others, have put in similar orders. And I just want the public to know it is not that nothing is happening behind the scenes. There is an issue between the building code and the product, and it needs to be worked out, and it's not straightforward. And my honest belief is that the city is working really hard to make it happen, and I don't want anyone to think that this is, not a priority.
Okay, this item is approved, sets up Public Utilities and Public Works. Next item.
Item 5.1 is a request of the mayor requesting confirmation of the appointment of Guylerna Pierre to the position of police officer.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Thank you, Madam President. So we have a number of new hires that were laid on the table at our last meeting. These are police officers and some firefighters. I was informed earlier today that there is some paperwork that still needs to happen before the firefighters can all be confirmed. This should not affect their start date. And I hope that this doesn't come as a disappointment. They were informed today, I was told by staff. So I'd like to move to lay items 5.3 to 5.10 on the table. We'll take those up as soon as we humanly can. And then I'd like to move for approval of 5.1 and 5.2, and after that, we actually have 2 new police officer hires that were previously referred to committee that I'd like to discharge so we can approve them tonight as well.
Okay, any discussion on that? Those items are approved.
And then I'd like to move to discharge items 24-1761 and 24-1763 for approval tonight as well.
And I'll read both of those into the record. So item 24-1761 is a request of the mayor requesting confirmation of the appointment of Michael Tran to the position of police officer. And item 24-1763 is a request of the mayor requesting confirmation of the appointment of Victor Romero Palomo to the position of police officer.
Thank you, and I'd move for approval of both those.
Okay, any discussion?
And then, Madam President, on 5.11, I'd like to ask that you please place this on file. This is the signing lists for these. It's a public document. If anyone has questions, that document is available for your review.
Okay, 5.11 is placed on file. Next item.
Item 6A is a report of the Committee on Finance, meeting on February 25th, 2025.
Councilor Wilson.
Madam President, the Finance Committee met on Tuesday, February 25th with all 5 committee members present. We took up a 7-item agenda over a very efficient 25-minute meeting. We recommended that you approve tonight 2 state grants to the Arts Council that we're all used to seeing come in every year, 1 prior invoice for the RSJ department, a CPA funding item for a park on Quincy Street, and then 2 state grants for the 299 Broadway development. We did have a good discussion around our processes around invoicing. Part of that was how vendors are notified when they're sending an invoice to the wrong department. And then there was a question also about what's the process for a department if they're sent an invoice incorrectly? How do we make sure that gets in the right hands? So yeah, it was a very fruitful meeting. So I'll ask that this committee report be accepted as submitted.
Okay, any discussion? The committee report's accepted and approved. Next item.
Item 6B is a report of the Committee on Land Use, meeting in joint session with the Planning Board on February 20th, 2025.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Madam President. We did indeed meet that day. We had committee members with us and Councilor Klingon pinch hitting for us as well. We took up a number of items. A lot of them were, before I actually take all that up, I would like to sever items number 24-1544 and 24-1461. These are 2 items that were basically placed on file when they should have been marked as withdrawn, so I just want to make sure they're marked correctly. So I move to sever these items from the regular report.
Okay, do we need a roll call? No. Okay, those items are severed and withdrawn.
All right, so I would like to mark these items as withdrawn. And then on the committee report itself, we had a number of other items that were either placed on file or withdrawn. We did have 2 substantial votes. One was requesting the ordainment of Section 3.2.6, building types of zoning ordinance to allow the neighborhood building permit of neighborhood residence zoning that's also in UR zoning. So what this does is in a urban residential area where you have a neighborhood residential house, a 2-family, 3-family house. It will allow you to do work on your house without having to go through an onerous process. So currently, if you're not tearing your building down and building a urban residential unit, you have to go through a ordeal. And Councilor Ewan Campen spearheaded this effort. He could explain it further. But one of my favorite sayings these days is, what is can be. We're allowing people who have their houses to have their houses and to do what they want with their houses. So we had a discussion about that. It was passed unanimously. I did raise a question from people in the community who were concerned that this might discourage housing development. And the city, in their position, was basically that this will just allow people to do what they want with their homes, and it may even in the future help them build denser housing because they're able to maintain their houses as they are presently. So that was passed unanimously. And then we also passed unanimously requesting the ordainment of Section 2.1 and 11.1 of the zoning ordinance to improve regulation of bike parking. This is basically making it easier for buildings to add bike parking to their apartments. And those were the big votes. Everything else was marked work complete or placed on file. I submit the committee report to be approved.
Councilor Scott.
Just on the report, I want to say thank you, especially for the inclusion of the neighborhood residential in urban residential forms. This is one of those unintended consequences of form-based zoning. I know at least one family on Prospect Street who was told, well, why don't you just knock down your house and build an apartment building there instead? So this is a fix that is years overdue, and I thank the committee and my colleague in Ward 3 for getting it done.
All right. Any other questions? Committee reports approved. Next item.
Madam President, that is actually going to place 2 items before the council for enrollment and ordainment this evening. The first of those is item 24-1447, an amendment to section 326 of the zoning ordinance to allow building types in NR to also be in UR. On enrollment, Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Said.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Davis. Councilor Pineda Newfeld.
Yes.
With 10 councilors in favor, none opposed, and 1 absent, that item is enrolled. And on ordainment, Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Said.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Davis. Councilor Pineda Newfeld.
Yes.
With 10 councilors in favor, none opposed, and 1 absent, that item is ordained. The next item before this council will be item 24-1448, amending sections 2.1 and 11.1 of the zoning ordinance for bicycle parking. On enrollment, Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Said.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Davis. Councilor Pineda Newfeld.
Yes.
With 10 councilors in favor, none opposed, and 1 absent, that item is enrolled. And on ordainment, Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Said.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Davis. Councilor Pineda Newfeld.
Yes.
With 10 councilors in favor, none opposed, and 1 absent, that item is ordained. And the next item before this council then is item 6C, a report of the Committee on Legislative Matters, meeting on February 18th, 2025.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm happy to be delivering this report as the vice chair, as the chair is currently indisposed due to illness. We met for a tight hour on that date, the 18th. There were 2 substantive items discussed. One was a review of the 2024 Surveillance Technology Annual Report. Just to remind folks, this is a report the city generates every year in response to an ordinance providing more surveillance oversight by the City Council a number of years ago. There was some good discussion there, and as a result, there are actually a few changes that are going to be made. We should receive an amended version of this report, but as this is a report that's simply conveyed to the City Council, this will just be marked work completed, and hopefully we'll see an updated version of that passed along shortly. There was also a discussion of the home rule petition, I believe originally brought by my colleague, Councilor Burnley, to prevent landlords from passing realtors' fees on to tenants. This is one of those things that just sounds absurd when somebody explains it to you that when you go to rent an apartment, the landlord can hire a realtor to handle all the transaction and the leases and all the, and then you, the tenant, have to pay for it. It's ridiculous. We now have a beautifully crafted home rule petition that went under a lot of scrutiny and discussion, and we are up to approve that this evening. It was recommended to be approved, so I would ask that the committee report be approved as submitted, and then look forward to taking that vote.
Councilor Burnley.
Thank you. Through you, I want to thank a lot of people really, really quickly, because I know it's late, for this. Firstly, thank you to Councilor Scott for handling that meeting very well. I know there were a lot of technical difficulties because even though I'm not on the committee anymore, I did watch, as this was of particular interest to me. And there was a great discussion in committee, including the fact that Somerville residents can pay, sometimes have to pay $14,000 when you add up first, last, security, and forced broker fees. This is an incredible barrier to entry for residents and an incredible barrier to retention for keeping our folks here, because as everyone knows, we are a very transient community, and that transience includes people moving internally. And it is very hard to keep someone here when you ask them to pay hundreds or thousands of dollars additionally to move into a home. I also want to thank Boston City Councilor Enrique Pepin and Cambridge City Councilor Jeevan Sabrina Wheeler for partnering with me on this. I know that Boston has already passed a similar home rule petition, and Cambridge is in queue to do so soon. And this is, to me, has been a great example of how we can work across municipal lines to try to raise awareness and the stakes around particular issues that are of great importance to our residents. And I'm happy to say that, a month and a half ago, the governor included a similar provision in her budget for this year. I am hopeful that we might actually see this practice ended in 2025, and we are the only state currently that allows this effectively, and we're the only metro area that does. So it would just be an incredible relief, I think, to a lot of people in our community if we could just make it a little bit easier to rent and live in our community. So thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, the committee report's approved, which brings us to the roll call.
Yes, indeed. So this is on the home rule petition, item 25-0213, to prevent landlords from passing realtors' fees on to tenants. On the item, Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor McGoughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Said.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Davis. Councilor Pineda Newfeld.
Yes.
With 10 councilors in favor, none opposed, and 1 absent, that home rule petition is approved.
Next item.
Next item is item 6D, a report of the Committee on Licenses and Permits, meeting on February 26th, 2025.
Councilor Burnley.
Thank you. Through you, we met on the aforementioned date for what, if I'm remembering correctly, was something around a 10-minute meeting. We tried to take up both these items very quickly so that some counselors could be at the media center's opening. And yeah, that's what happened, and I submit this report to be approved. Thank you.
Okay, any questions? The committee report is approved. Next item.
Item 6E is a report of the Committee on Open Space, Environment, and Energy, meeting on February 20th, 2025.
Councilor Mba.
Thank you, Madam President. So the committee met on February 20th. 3 members were present, constituting a quorum. We discussed 2 agenda items. First, with Commissioner Letton of DPW, we discussed the proposal to lengthen the schedule of yard waste collection in the fall season. And because of climate change, leaves now stay on the trees through November, and some homeowners cannot finish their raking and bagging in time for the final pickup in the first week of December. So Commissioner Layden explained that the contract with waste haulers now provides for biweekly pickup during 7 months, April through December. And adding another week will likely require extra costs and readjustment of operations because preparation for snow plow sorting get underway in early December. But nonetheless, she said that she could explore the possibility of schedule readjustment within the existing contracts, perhaps allowing for the final December yard waste pickup to happen 1 week later. So she will report back, so that the item, she will report back to us at our next open space meeting, so we kept this item in committee. And then the last item we discussed was about MassSafe. So Mr. Anderson from OSE explained how the state is providing some additional incentives for local homeowners, landlords, and business owners to make the changeover to heat pumps and other clean heating and cooling systems. So MassSafe program offers free energy audits and technical assistance to owners who are looking to install new systems. There are various rebates, no interest loans, tax discount that can apply, depending on the types of system, the income level of a household, and the type of construction project. So OSE will be conducting a publicity campaign to encourage people to participate. And the energy advisor has begun work and will be connecting with homeowner and building owners as well. So I submit this, report as submitted.
Questions? Okay, the committee report's approved. Next item.
Item 6E is a report of the Special Committee on Rodent Issues, meeting on February 19th, 2025.
Councilor Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. Rodent Issues Special Committee met, had a very productive conversation. We had a presentation on an item that Councilor Klingon had submitted last year that ended up being a pretty in-depth look at some of the trends in the city. I would encourage everyone, go watch the meeting. There's a lot of good data in that presentation there, including some encouraging trends, some less so. We then moved on to, we had a discussion about an item I'd put in about SCARs, getting an update on our usage of SCARs, whether, as we'd heard last year, we discontinued that. We did hear a positive update on that. And I'd ask the question, are we going back and actually reclaiming SCARs that had gone out, that were sitting in those black boxes? And the answer was a yes, we are making an effort to go do that, because that was a concern, that we'd put all these black boxes all over the city, and okay, sure, maybe we're not deploying additional SCARs, but what about the ones that are all out there? And that was a positive update to hear. And then finally, there were 3 items I'd put in that I intend to be standing items, and I basically just kept those in committee. We're going to go back and revisit those and hopefully get, I imagine, quarterly updates on communication with the public about education about rodents and how to prevent our city from becoming a welcoming community for rodents, we'll say. About what we're doing to enforce the behaviors that welcome rodents into the city, and then finally what we're doing to mitigate existing infestations. So with that, I ask the committee report be accepted as submitted.
Questions? Okay, the committee report's approved. Next item.
Item 6G is a report of the Committee on Traffic and Parking, meeting on February 24th, 2025.
Councilor Said.
Thank you, Madam President. The Traffic and Parking Committee met with all 3 members present. All items were marked as completed, with the exception of 2 items that were kept in committee. The first item, the no idling signs on New Washington Street. Item this we kept in committee so we can hear from Director Rainfred. We discussed the increased traffic along Lombardy Street, Mystic Ave, and Grand Union Boulevard due to signal changes. Director Rawson stated that the congestion is due to DOT roadway construction and that the project should be completed this construction season. We discussed working with the Mass DOT to increase flex post usage and other pedestrian safety measures on crosswalks along McGrath Highway. Director Rawson said that the city is working with DOT on this resurfacing project that is running behind schedule, and that he's hoping to have the posts installed this construction season, with staff advocating for installation as soon as possible. He reported that DOT has designed and procured flex posts, and he stated that all road users will benefit from having them in place. Regarding developing plans for safe pedestrian crossing of Lowell Street at Bailey Park and additional traffic calming measures between Summer and Highland Ave, Director Rawson noted that Lowell Street is an emergency response route, so any traffic calming measures are coordinated with the fire department. The director explained that crosswalks have their own installation criteria, and a crosswalk can't be added where no accessible ramp exists. So installation of new crosswalks may involve cutting curbs and rebuilding sidewalk panels. Another crosswalk consideration is sight lines. The site in question is scheduled to be evaluated this spring. We also discussed the feasibility of signal priority for MBTA buses in Union Square. Director Rawson stated that this is a priority project and that it is feasible. However, there are many complications and 3 high-volume intersections that will need to be coordinated. The MBTA is investing time and money for signaling, and the design should be finished in the first half of this year and will then go out to bid. Regarding violating the no left turn signage at the Somerville High School exit on Highland Ave and Vinyl Ave, we kept this in committee so we can hear also from SPD and Director Renfret. The mobility director said that mobility staff designed flex post patterns in 2023 that helped. However, it's not 100% effective since it's hard to restrict one movement without affecting another, and staff will be working regularly with the school department relative to the safe practice for student drop-off and pickup. With that, I ask that this committee report be approved as submitted.
Questions? Councilor Yankampin.
Just one note on Highland and Vinyl outside the high school. I was informed that there is going to be a crossing guard at the high school at that location starting next week. They've been doing a lot of recruiting. Thank you to Lieutenant Reimel.
Great news. Very good news.
I got his rank wrong.
Any other questions? Okay, that committee report is approved. Next item.
Item 7.1 is a request of the mayor requesting ordainment of an amendment to sections 2-304 through 2-310 of the Code of Ordinances to update the Commission on Energy Use and Climate Change.
Send that to Legislative Matters. Next item.
Madam President, can I move to waive
Councilor
the readings
Williams.
of some items?
Wilson, yes.
I'll move to waive the readings of items 7.2 to 7.12, 7.15, 10.4, 10.12, and 10.13. I'll ask that we send 7.2 to 7.12, 10.4, and 10.12 to Finance, and that we place a copy on file with a copy sent to Finance of 7.15 and 10.13.
Okay. Got it? Okay, next item.
Speak on your item?
Sorry, on 10.4?
10.4.
Sure, Madam President, is that all right?
Absolutely.
Yes, colleagues, I just wanted to draw your attention to, this is an amendment to the salaries ordinance for our consideration. When the non-union salary study was presented to the council, we had an extended conversation about elected official compensation. My feeling at that time was that wherever the conversation lands about our base salary, and I tend to support keeping that where it is for the time being, we should, when the rest of city staff gets a cost of living increase, the small annual raise to match inflation, we should too. And that should be all elected officials, school committee, city council, mayor. And the reason for this is because whatever you think the salary is, should be, it should not decay year after year. It should not just be worth a lot less 10 years later than it was when it was set. There's no other employees in the city that doesn't grow. So I worked with our legislative policy analyst to write language to do that. It is tagged to staff COLA increases. So it only happens to elected officials. If it happens to the rest of staff, I submit this for your consideration. I just want to draw attention to it now so that people can think about how they feel about it before there's actually deliberation on it.
Councilor, can I ask a clarifying question? Just based on what I read and what you said, it's a cost of living adjustment not indexed to inflation. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay.
It matches whatever staff got.
Whatever staff gets. Okay. I just wanted to note that currently staff increases are not matched to inflation.
Thank you for that.
Yes. Okay. Questions? Yes. Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Madam President. I look forward to discussing this in finance. I just was reminded that it was only 3 weeks ago that we were informed by our Human Resources Director and Budget Director through expressing the mayor's opinion that this job is a 6-hour-a-week job. So I just, one of those things that it's nice to keep in mind as we enter budget season. Anyway, thank you to my colleague from Ward 3. Let's see if this time can be different.
We're 3 hours into our 6 hours, Councilor. Next item. Sorry.
Item 7.14 is a communication of the mayor conveying a forthcoming appropriation request from the salary contingency account to various city departments to fund an update to the non-union salary ordinance.
This item is placed on file. Do we send this to finance as well?
I don't know if they want it. There's nothing here, so I don't know if there's anything to talk about.
Okay, Liaison Hutter, 714, would you like that sent to finance? Okay, we'll send a copy to finance. Next item.
Item 8.1 is an officer's communication from the city solicitor requesting approval to retain Lawyers for Civil Rights Boston as outside legal counsel on a pro bono basis to represent the city in connection with any executive order issued by the Trump administration impacting sanctuary cities.
News flash, we sued the Trump administration on Monday, along with the city of Chelsea. You can read all about the lawsuit on the City of Somerville website. Lots of details there. The gist is we're suing because the threat of withholding federal funds to sanctuary cities violates our constitutional rights. So Lawyers for Civil Rights is the attorney on it, and I believe we're going to approve this evening? Yes? Okay. Any questions on this item? Yes, Councilor McLaughlin.
Thanks, Madam President. I just want to be clear. Not asking for this tonight, but at some point I would like to go into executive session to discuss this strategy. Just curious where we're going.
Yes, I will note that and work with the mayor's office for the next meeting around that. Any other questions? Yes. Councilor Scott.
Madam President, I appreciate that. Also, I just want to mention I've been contacted by elected officials in other cities and towns wondering why we didn't ask them to join too. So perhaps in your capacity as president, you could pass it along to the mayor to encourage us to recruit more folks to join us in this. I think there's a lot of support for it in the state. Thank you.
Noted. And councilors, on the website, somervillema.gov/SC lawsuit press packet is a really informative FAQ. Some of the questions you might have are within there, but it's everything that was released to the media. So if you're looking for some more detailed information or a copy, of course, of the lawsuit itself, it's there on the website. Okay, this item's approved. Next item.
The next item is going to be item 9.1.
Councilor Burnley.
Thank you. Through the chair, I would ask that the readings of 9.1 through 9.41, as well as 10.14 through 10.27 be waived and approved. I would just note for some eagle-eyed folks in the community, you may notice that one of the items that I just referred to is a renewal for a license for our esteemed Herb Chambers on McGrath. Folks may have noticed that, well, how many days ago was this? 9 days ago, 9 days ago, the Herb Chambers Auto Group was sold for $1.3 billion and they're sold off to a company, with the exception of our very own Somerville location. This is the one that they really wanted, as you may be able to tell by all the helicopter rides in East Somerville. So I just want to put it out there. We're the last man standing, and that feels good. Yeah.
Okay, those items are approved. Next item.
Item 9.42 is a public communication from Brandon Cornell and Simona Gokin submitting comments regarding Copper Mill project.
That will be placed on file. Next item.
Item 9.43 is a public communication from the Massachusetts Transgender Political Coalition submitting comments regarding item 24-1686, the creation of an LGBTQ Legal Services Stabilization Fund.
Okay, we'll place that on file with a copy sent to legislative matters. Okay, next item.
Item 9.44 is a public communication from Jen Harrington submitting comments regarding the Anti-Displacement Task Force.
We'll place that item on file. Next item.
Item 10.2 is an order by Councilor Mba that the Director of Health and Human Services submit in writing monthly updates to this council regarding ongoing efforts to address homelessness.
Councilor Mba.
Just self-explanatory, just approve it.
Approve it. Okay, that item's approved. Next item.
Item 10.3 is a communication by Councilor Mba conveying a report of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Councilor Mba.
Thank you, Madam President. So the Affordable Housing Trust met, 2 weeks ago on February 13 and approved an early acquisition loan of $3,350,000 to the Somerville Community Land Trust and Just a Start for the acquisition of the vacant lot at 259 Medford Street. So this is the lot where the former A-Plus Auto Body Shop was located, just behind the public library. In the Community Land Trust and Just a Start acting jointly are proposing to build a 100% affordable residential building with about 50 units on the land that measures just over 1/3 of an acre. They have recently filed a proposed rezoning from MR3 to MR4 with affordable housing overlay. So this change will increase the development potential on the lot from about 30 units to over 50 units and will allow the height to rise to 7 stories. So the loan will allow the developers to take ownership of the land in late summer in preparation for the project design and working out the funding package with the state tax-exempt financing and other subsidies. So I ask that this report be accepted as submitted.
Okay, that item will be placed on file.
Oh, Madam,
Yes.
Madam President, yeah, another action that we took was about the trust. From the trust was to approve another additional $125,000 funding for the Somerville Community Corporation to cover its costs, of managing the 100 Homes program.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, questions? All right, that item's placed on file. Next item.
Item 10.5 is an order by Councilor Scott that the Director of Mobility address the dangerous conditions with the bike lane entrance at Washington Street and Webster Avenue.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Madam President. I think this order actually went through a bit of lost in translation, so lest anybody confuse this with a very similar order that I put in about a month ago and actually sponsored some residents to speak on. This is just further issues, further problems that hadn't surfaced yet until we had such a delightful snowstorm. It doesn't do much good to have the bike lanes well cleared if they are completely unenterable due to giant ice dams on the street. I think this feeds into some of the some of the discussion that we had earlier about sidewalk clearing, but also, this is not just a mobility division problem. There's an engineering problem as well. Anybody who's been down there knows that the drainage on the street reconstruction project is deeply flawed. And so there's several inches of standing water, probably still there right now, that when it does go sub-zero, that becomes a sheet of ice that makes the bike lane completely inaccessible to anybody. So these are new wrinkles on dangerous conditions there, and I would ask that it be referred to traffic and parking, and I would also ask that Director Rawson not feel like this is directed only at him. Hopefully we can have Director Postlethwaite as well to talk about how we're going to manage the construction, the contractor coming back next year to repair some of these deficiencies. Thank you.
Okay, that item is approved and sent to traffic and parking. Next item.
Item 10.6 is an order by Councilor Scott that the Director of Inspectional Services enforce Section 11-111 of the Code of Ordinances, registration and maintenance of vacant property in light of the recent collapse of 316 Somerville Avenue.
Councilors Mba and Wilson would like to sign on, and Said. Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Madam President. As I take a deep breath, this is one of those things where it's, I can't say it's a solution in search of a problem. It's a problem with a solution that was actually put in place by this council, I believe all the way back in 2019. The vacant properties ordinance, which was passed, has literally never been enforced in this city. We've heard various reasons for why that is, but for members of the public, it's one of the questions that I get very frequently. Why don't we do something about all these vacant properties? And it's not just an economic impact, but these properties that are not being occupied are inherently more dangerous. That was the entire basis of the fee that we have for periodic inspections of these abandoned properties. This particular property has been abandoned for over a decade. It's the old Royal Bakery. It was one of the first things that I handled as a counselor coming onto this body was an application for redevelopment there that went nowhere. And when these properties stay vacant, not only are they harborage for rats, not only are they dangerous for folks who may potentially go in there squatting during the winter, but sometimes they just collapse, which leads to helicopters over Union Square taking video of it. This could have been prevented if the mayor had simply prioritized enforcement ever in the last 6 years, and as it goes on both mayors, previous and current, of this ordinance that's on file. So I would hope that this be sent to committee for some discussion, and perhaps we can revisit, since I know budget requests are going in right now for the budget season that I'm so eagerly looking forward to, that hopefully we can finally rectify the situation and not have more buildings collapse that we could have identified and resolved. Thank you.
Councilor Burnley.
Just really briefly, I would note about this property, because when I saw this, I immediately had questions and concerns. I will note that the city did receive a complaint about this property on July 8th, 2024. The complaint read, "Building is not secure. There are openings in the back of the structure and missing portions of the floor system inside." The complaint was resolved the following day. Following year, the building collapsed, partially. So I certainly have some questions. I have pictures of the site from this complaint, because I know ISD did go down there. They did make a request of the property owner. I would like to learn more about what follow-up was done after that complaint came in and was resolved. Thank you.
Okay, that item's approved, sent to legislative matters. Councilor Scott, is that the committee you'd like to discuss this in? Or?
I could go to a couple places, sure.
Public utilities,
like
public
it somewhere
works?
else, Councilor Burnley? All right. You know what? Councilor Davis isn't here to say no, so let's put it in his committee.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, let's send it to legislative matters. Next item.
Item 10.7 is a communication by Councilor Scott conveying information on a sophisticated new scam targeting Somerville residents purporting to be the Middlesex Sheriff's Office.
Councilor Scott.
This is a juicy one. There are scammers. There have always been scammers. Particularly, they prey on residents that may not have English as a first language, or some of our elderly residents. This time I got a call saying that it was the Middlesex Sheriff's Office looking to, because I had missed jury duty, but I had signed a piece of paper that said, and so maybe there was a fraudulent issue, and that they could send sheriff's deputies to my home to arrest me and book me and then hold me for up to 30 days, or they could handle it as a civil matter if I was willing to come down and resolve it. This is clearly a shakedown. It's clearly a scam, but it was actually a very sophisticated one where the person identified themselves, gave a name, gave a badge number, talked about it being on a recorded line. After getting off the phone with these nice gentlemen, I contacted the Middlesex Sheriff's Office where they said, you know what, this is actually something that's happening a lot. So if it's happening a lot, I would like to make sure our residents know about it. Just like many of the other scams that the council has raised awareness of over the years, this is one that is particularly alarming. I mean, I have more experience with law enforcement in the Middlesex Sheriff's Department than I would actually like, and even so, it raised my heartbeat a few points. So, I could see it easily catching people. The Middlesex Sheriff's Department would like more information about it. So if you do get contacted, please feel free to reach out to them. They will put you in the file. And be aware that this is sophisticated not just from a from a con perspective, but also technologically, where they said, oh, well, you know what, I understand you're concerned. I'll have my lieutenant call you back from our main number. And sure enough, I received a phone call about an hour later that had on my caller ID the Middlesex Sheriff's main number there. So it looks very legitimate. Anyway, watch out for it. Nobody's going to arrest you for missing jury duty. And yeah, please be careful out there, folks.
Thank you. Questions? I'm Councilor Wilson.
Yeah, Madam President, I want to thank my colleague for bringing this up. As has been pointed out in things I've read about similar scams, if you're under threat of arrest, whether it be for someone executing an arrest warrant, the police generally will not call you. They're generally going to show up at your house. So to the public, be skeptical if it's someone identifying themselves as law enforcement calling you up about an arrest matter.
Okay. This item is placed on file. Next item.
Item 10.8 is a communication by Councilor Scott conveying an update on the status of charter negotiations with the mayor.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Madam President. The update, for those who might be curious as to what's happening, there are working group apparently met with staff last week. There has been work to clean up some of the technical issues that Councilor Davis has seen in it. But apparently with the negotiations, it seems to be stuck, with the sticking points being a 4-year term that the mayor very greatly desires, and oversight of the appointment of the city solicitor, which our working group representatives have decided that the city council greatly prioritizes, and honestly is something that was discussed extensively during our charter committee meetings a year and a half ago when we actually passed a charter to the mayor. Since that appears to be at a logjam, it is the fervent hope of our policy analyst that a home rule petition will be presented at our next council meeting, either one that resolves this conflict, or one that largely represents the version that the city council approved and sent to the mayor back a year and a half ago, with the modifications and edits that would clean it up and make it ready to go to the State House. At which point, we as a city council will have the opportunity to either vote yes or no on that, sign it, and send it to the mayor, where she can do whatever she likes with it. So that's our update. Hopefully, we will have a substantive text update at our next council meeting. My lips to God's ears.
All right. Questions? No. Item is placed on file. Next item.
Item 10.9 is an order by Councilor Wilson that the Director of Mobility and Director of Engineering discuss with this council the effectiveness of speed cushions as a traffic calming measure and potential applications on key fire department response routes.
Councilor Wilson.
Madam President, it's late. I'll be quick. In the last traffic and parking meeting, we heard that one of the reasons why Lowell Street, a section of Lowell Street that doesn't currently have speed humps on it, might be slower to get those is because of concerns about it being a key route for fire department response. So this is something I've seen in place down in Providence, and I know other communities use it as well. I'm curious to have a discussion about it and see if it might resolve some of those concerns and might allow the folks on that stretch of Lowell to get some traffic calming. Thanks. I ask it be sent to traffic and parking.
Okay. Items approved and sent to traffic and parking. Next item.
Item 10.10 is a communication by Councilor Wilson in his capacity as Chair of the Finance Committee, conveying a communication on fiscal year 2026 budget priorities.
Councilor Wilson.
Madam President, first of all, shout out to Councilor Strezza for being the first member of this body to get in their FY26 individual budget priorities. The mayor did request those from us back in January. Those should be submitted by, and there's a whole memo that explains a bunch of stuff. I'm just going to really quickly say, make sure that yours are in by the March 27th regular meeting in order to be on the agenda and be discussed at the April 2nd Committee of the Whole meeting of the Finance Committee, where we're going to do something different this year. There's no categorization or bucketing, no voting, no resolutions. We're going to have a discussion. And that meeting will be the product. Those minutes will be the product of that meeting. And we're going to leave it at that. So we're simplifying things. I think it'll be productive discussion, but get those budget priorities in. Follow Councilor Strezzo's example. Again, you're encouraged to do those in memo form, not do individual resolutions. If you've submitted yours and you have additional ones, do a supplemental memo. Thanks.
Great. That item is placed on file. Next item.
Item 10.11 is a resolution by Councilor Said that the Massachusetts Department of Public Utilities and Eversource do everything within their power to reduce the burden of rising natural gas costs for Somerville residents.
I would like to sign on. Councilor Wilson would like to sign on, and Councilor Klingon, the whole council wants to sign on. Councilor Said.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, colleagues. This resolution is in response to constituents that have reached out to me this week about the outrageous increase in natural gas bills. Some constituents' bills literally doubled. And it's also in support of our state delegation's advocacy work right now. Our legislative colleagues from around the state have been calling on the Department of Public Utilities and corporate utilities to take action to provide economic relief. This week, Eversource shared that they will offer a 10% discount on March and April bills, but will impose carrying costs or interest on the deferred payments. Our state delegation is pushing back on that. We have yet to get a commitment from Eversource that they will not do that. So I'm sure we're all following this conversation right now, and I think it's important that we support our state delegation, and also listen to our constituents, because a bill that's literally doubling is a big financial burden. Thank you.
Questions? Okay, that item is approved. Did you want that in committee?
I think for now, just approve.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Item's approved. Next item.
Item 10.28 is a public communication from 3 residents submitting comments regarding 11 Ward Street zoning.
That item is placed on file.
And that brings us to the end of the agenda, Madam President.
Are there any late items, Madam Clerk?
There are no further items before this council.
With that, we are adjourned.